Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. The time is now 6:01. I'd like to open tonight's Board of Selectmen meeting, Monday, November 7th, 2022, held in the Walkway Meeting Room at the Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Massachusetts. Broadcast live on cable channel 18, streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. This meeting will be convened in open session. At this time, I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could have a moment of silence. Thank you. Before we convene the Affordable Housing Trust joint meeting, I'd like to ask the presenters of the Newtown Seal plaque to come forward. I have here Stephanie Dillis and Madeline Weber.
So I'm not seeing that we have any of the two girls here.
Okay.
Madeline Weber was definitely going to come. Stephanie Dillis did let me know today that she couldn't. I'm Superintendent Patty DeBoer. We have Dr. Manette. She is the Mashpee Middle High School principal, for those of you who may not have met her. And then we have Mike Looney. He is our Director of Career and Technical Education. And he might talk a little, I'm wheezing, he might talk a little bit more about the process that was used. This is supposed to replace the old seal that is at the base of the stairs going up to the town manager's office. And so maybe I think I'll have Mr. Looney explain the process, if you don't mind. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us here. This was constructed in a similar sense of other seals being done in the school. We have a overhead shopbot machine, which is a CNC router that basically cuts out all of the images of the seal, but the real work is done with those two amazing students, Stephanie Dillis and Madeline Weber, with painting everything. It took a long time, and under the tutelage of Miss Deb Trianis, their art teacher, they really did a nice job. So I want to, recognize Miss Trianis for all the work that she did with these students, and for the students themselves putting in countless hours getting this all painted up.
And I know we're working on arranging a tour of all of our schools for the select board. So hopefully if you are able to participate in that, we will show you the machine that can create that lovely carved wood. So thank you.
I just have to say that, beautiful job. It's nice to see that we have such talent in our school systems, and we really appreciate the work that they put into it, everyone involved, and they did an excellent job. That's a beautiful rendering of the Newtown seal, and the town's very appreciative of the work they did. So on behalf of the board, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I could give a shout out to the superintendent, because she was visiting Town Hall for a meeting, and I remember walking down the stairs, and we had taken the old seal down, and I said, is there any way we could replace the one that you previously made? And she was very cooperative, and I can't thank the staff over at the school and the students that worked on this enough. Obviously, it came out really nice, and I just want to give a shout out to the superintendent, because she said we will do that without hesitation.
Thank you, everyone. Beautiful job. I can't say enough. It's really spectacular, the colors and everything. They captured the essence of the seal. I mean, just great work.
Yeah, beautiful. I think the
Beautiful.
whole board agrees that it's beautiful workmanship. Thank you so much.
We will make sure the two girls know how you responded, how you felt.
Yeah, please.
Very impressive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I don't know where you want that left. DPW.
Back to the back.
Yeah, the back of the room, and we'll have DPW hang it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So at this time, I'd like to convene the joint meeting for the Affordable Housing Trust and the Select Board. The time is now 6:10, we'll say. Mr. Chair, if you want to open your meeting
You're the chair
of
The
the
meeting.
Affordable Housing
of
Trust?
this meeting, yes.
All right. At this time, I'd like to open the joint meeting between the the Select Board of Mashpee and the Affordable Housing Trust. Tonight, Monday, November 7th, 2022, Walk White Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. Broadcast live on local cable channel 18, streamed live on Town of Mashpee website, and the time is now 6:11. The meeting will be convened in open session. We've already done the Pledge of Allegiance and the moment of silence, so we'll move on and get right into the business of the joint meeting. The Affordable Housing Trust. Discussion approval of, first item being the discussion and approval of submission of an application to the Community Preservation Act Committee for the May 1st, 2023 town meeting for procurement of funds for future Affordable Housing Trust projects. Discussion on that from the board? Yes, Mr. Chair.
I think this is something that we decided to do a couple of years ago, that we would start to bring the annual mandated set-aside for affordable housing from the CRA funds into the trust. And I'm certainly in support of that.
So asking the Evan Laher to speak to the matter?
When I first started as the town planner almost 5 years ago, I was asked to produce an application for the CPC to seed the Affordable Housing Trust, which was successful at that time. But when I first brought that application forth to the trust, to the CPC, a vote of the trust had not occurred to authorize that submission of that application. So I'd like to correct that procedural misstep back from 5 years ago. And I think the timing of this is important given the upcoming projects we're hoping to accomplish in the town, some of the opportunities we anticipate potentially arising in the near future. And back in 2018, when the trust was initially seeded with $300,000, the trust subsequently voted sometime thereafter to commit that $300,000 to the LeClaire Village Affordable Housing Project at 950 Falmouth Road to assist with the construction of a more advanced on-site wastewater treatment system to get them down to somewhere around, I think it was 5 milligrams per liter of nitrogen at that site. So the Affordable Housing Trust, after that commitment, is without funds to take advantage of opportunities. So I've presented to you a draft application for your consideration for submission to the CPC by their November 17th deadline, which is upcoming. The figures proposed are consistent with the 2018 submittal, a total of $300,000. That it was a relatively arbitrary figure at the time. It's a relatively arbitrary figure now. If it was more, I'm sure we would find valuable use of it, but I wanted to provide you that figure as a launching point for discussion. So some of the projects we might anticipate using those funds for are similar to what we had done with 950 Falmouth Road, supplementing the local commitment or match of upcoming affordable housing projects. But not only that, to take advantage of affordable housing opportunities as they arise. So the trust is in a unique position to take advantage of those opportunities where other municipal entities are not, where we generally require a town meeting vote to authorize funds for these particular expenditures. So one thing I like to do frequently is pay attention to upcoming foreclosures or opportunities that property owners present to us to convert a current non-deed restricted year-round or seasonal housing unit to an affordable unit, or to take advantage of a foreclosure to acquire and convert to an affordable unit, or any other number of affordable housing objectives the town may have. So this would put us in the best position to respond to, unique conditions as they present themselves without needing to wait for authorization of funds at a town meeting. We would have the ability to come to you to request the expenditure of those funds for affordable housing priorities. So that's the nature of the application. And so, yeah, that's essentially my role in this, is just preparing that application for your consideration. That's it. Thank you.
Does anyone from either board have questions or concerns, or I'll open discussion?
So, I mean, Evan, so we're going to approve this, if we were to approve this application for submission, this basically still has to go in front of the town meeting in May, correct?
This would need to go to the CPC first for the CPC to vote in the affirmative to submit an article to for town meeting's consideration. So this is just authorizing staff to submit this application to the CPC on your behalf.
Anyone else have questions or concerns or discussion?
I think it's a great idea. That way you can move this forward, right, without going back to another town meeting. So.
I think we are in a critical point with affordable housing issues where they are, and I think it's a good step, and thank you for your work putting into it. I did read over it, and it looks like it should get support. I hope that it does. So we have to vote on this collectively as a group or independently?
Yes, as the trust.
As a trust, okay.
A motion to approval of submission of an application to the CPC Act Committee for May 1st, 2023 town meeting for procurement of funds for future affordable housing trust projects.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Aye?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's unanimous. That motion passes. Moving on to the next item on the joint meeting agenda, discussion and approval of issuing a request for proposals with regard to 209 Old Barnstable Road Affordable Housing Project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just before I jump into my spiel, I do want to clarify that I am not seeking your authorization of a final draft of an RFP today. I am asking for policy direction from the trust to pursue a deviation from our initial intent to pursue development at 108 Commercial Street this year in exchange for development at 209, or at least procurement of a developer for these sites. 108 Commercial Street has been held up in a way due to title issues that are currently being unraveled by town council. Some number of months ago, he estimated that this could take upwards of 1 year to complete, to give free and clear title so that the town could award a project to a developer thereafter. So given the state of the housing crisis on Cape Cod, it seemed prudent to see what opportunities we currently had to, move the ball down the field, so to speak. And 209 Old Barnstable Road was the ideal selection from the planning department's perspective. This is a 3.8 acre tract of land, generally adjacent to Quashnet and Casey Coombs schools. In 2017, town meeting had already voted to authorize 209 Old Barnstable Road be used for affordable housing purposes, and it had subsequently been transferred into the care and custody of the Affordable Housing Trust. Furthermore, the site has a feasibility study already completed on it. This is essentially a shovel-ready project absent the award to a developer. It's my understanding that some time ago that this site was brought forth for consideration, and there were some questions from the neighborhood that essentially resulted in this project being put on a shelf until we could unravel some of the questions that people had had. So in consideration of that, I'm requesting the Trust's support in establishing a process with the neighborhood as well as some staff and Trust representation to discern what some of those concerns may be, so that any practical or thoughtful concerns that we could, work into the RFP itself in terms of site design considerations or architecture or building typologies or screening or sound, whatever those issues may be, if we can anticipate them and plan for them, hopefully some of those concerns that had shelved this project years ago would be mitigated. But given the severity of our situation, it seems imprudent to not take advantage of such a well-executed opportunity that the town has already identified, that town meeting has already committed for this particular use. So if there are any questions about the particular site or what the department's intentions are for community engagement, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But at this time, my primary request is, seeking your support to deviate from the focus on 108 Commercial Street until such time as the title situation has been figured out by town council and the matter settled in land court, and to give staffs your support in pursuing a community engagement plan to bring forth a draft RFP in final form. This is a draft I've produced that is essentially game ready, but it hasn't taken any considerations into neighborhood concerns yet. So with that understanding, I'd be seeking your support on that endeavor.
I think it's great
One-
that you're going to bring the community, the neighborhood in on this. I think that was important, because we didn't do that.
I think as we're about to, we're coming off the tail end of the community engagement work for the local comprehensive plan, and we're going to be immediately segueing into the update of the housing production plan, where a lot of these community engagement efforts are going to be fleshed out. And so this is, somewhat of an opportunity to pilot what an engagement could like and community prioritization for affordable housing projects could look like moving forward.
Evan, what's the timeline for engagement with the community? Do you have an idea on when you would like to hold the meetings, how often, how many, and when you would like to wrap that up by?
So what I propose in my memo to you essentially asks for, it proposes at least one neighborhood forum. I would anticipate it would look something like 2. Further, once we ascertain and understand some of the concerns from the neighborhood, we would likely build those into an RFP for issuance. And what I suggest in my memo to you all is that we develop, like we had with 950 Falmouth Road, a review committee of the actual submissions from qualified developers. And I would suggest it might be worthwhile to consider the inclusion of a neighborhood representative on that review committee, in addition to members of the trust, the select board, planning department, town manager's office, and the conservation agent, in consideration of this being in a natural heritage endangered species protected area. So the densities that are called out for this particular site by the feasibility study require the preservation of, I think, around, I want to say 5 acres. I'm kind of shooting from the hip there. A number of a reasonable size of land area be permanently restricted for the box turtle habitat, so that we can develop the densities that are feasible on the site. So I'd like the conservation agent to be included in the review process to see how developers manage the sensitivity of the site here. But I would be in a position, I'd say, Mr. Chair, to notify the neighborhood and launch an engagement process within a month or 2 months' time, with the hope of having a draft RFP back to you in the spring.
You want a
Yes.
motion to support?
Just real quick, Evan, as far as 108 Commercial, how many bedrooms is that potentially planned?
We were in the process of awarding a consultant for a feasibility study at the site, so we haven't done any analysis with regard to bedroom count yet. That was what the feasibility study was going to tell us in
Okay.
consideration of current site conditions, access to infrastructure, soil conditions, you name it. So we have all of that information and data for 209, but we didn't have it for 108, which is why, again, 209 is a logical choice to kind of push ahead while we sit tight and wait for 108, because just as a general reminder, for 108, we could have pursued the feasibility study absent the title issue being rectified, but if it turned out that the title showed that the town holds title to less square footage or less acreage than we believe we would, then it would change the outcome or the findings of the feasibility study potentially. So we felt it prudent to rectify those issues before awarding a consultant.
So part two of my question would be actually, is more of a comment. In 950, we've been talking about that for 7.5 years I've been a
Yeah.
selectman. I mean, and probably before that. So I don't think there's nothing wrong with even having both, getting them in the ready position, and we need them both.
It takes
So-
a substantial amount of time to build affordable housing, I think, is
Yeah.
something we've all learned here.
So I think it's a great idea.
So as far as this, would we have to take votes on each item where there's several different goals in
Oh, no,
the
just give
memo?
them support, motion to
Yeah, I think just, Mr. Chair, just if I could just get an understanding that I'm in the right direction here, because I'll be back with a draft RFP. We'll be back with findings of an engagement, of community engagement. Again, I'm not looking for your approval of anything, but if I'm headed in the right direction, I'd like to know.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we just wanted to get your approval that the shift in direction was clearly authorized or supported. Obviously, he'll be returning with much more detailed information. But we didn't want to shift direction without coming before you.
Right. I didn't know if you were looking for support to develop a directive from the group to develop the neighborhood action plan as stated.
I do, well, one thing I did note is I put a proposal in there. If there's any feelings of inadequacy or if there's something missing that you think should be included, that would be feedback I'd like to have today.
Okay.
Or if you think of something as you leave, you know where to find me.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr.
I just
Chair.
add to this on behalf of the Affordable Housing Committee that this was a project that was long in the making. It took us a long time to get the feasibility study, and we were a little disappointed that we had to put it on the shelf for a while. I think we have to get used to doing more than one project at once. So on the possibility that 108 will get maybe a probability that 108 will be ready to move on before this is actually in construction. I think it's, we just need to get used to simultaneous projects going on, or we'll never meet them, we'll never meet the need that we have in the town. So that's one. The second is that just wanted to note that the committee is strongly in favor of involving the neighborhood, in my experience, and I think our experience in town is that the more the residents are involved from the neighborhood nearby and impacted by a proposed development, the better it is, and it ought to start early, and it ought to continue throughout the entire project, right through occupancy and actually afterward, because you want to make sure that the project is maintained over the long term, and it becomes and stays an asset to the community in which it's located. So I'm strongly in favor. Evan and I have talked about this, and we're pleased to make outreaches to the neighborhood and begin a process, which the developer will.
209 Old Barnstable Road.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
with an adoption of policy.
Need a roll call?
Roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Last item on this joint meeting agenda tonight is the discussion and approval of the adoption of a policy stating local preference shall be a priority for every affordable housing project in Mashpee, and further, staff is authorized to fulfill those requirements early in the procurement and subsequent permitting processes. If you could speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Local preference for 950 Falmouth Road, Leclerc Village, I think has generally always been contemplated, but I was unawares and was notified relatively recently that it is upon the town to notify and submit documentation supporting the necessity for local preference to the developer, in this case Poe and Hack, as well as the Department of Housing and Community Development, which my department is prepared to do. So the three things that we need to do to establish local preference is justify the need for local preference and justify the extent of the local preference. You know, what is the makeup of the local preference itself? Justifying the need on Cape Cod in the region is very easy. I don't think I will go through some of the data points you've all heard over and over again over the years. But one thing I looked into as I began kind of drafting a document to support this endeavor, if the trust authorizes my request, one thing I did was look at the existing waiting lists for the Housing Authority as well as for Mashpee Village. And so I'm going to tell you what these numbers are, explain them a little bit, and then get into what we've calculated as what Mashpee's need is in terms of, or shortfall in terms of number of units, and the shortfall in terms of income levels across the town. So the Housing Authority reported to me, and I'll caveat this with the fact that these are national waiting lists figures I'm about to present to you. So these figures represent households or individuals across the entire country who, if a unit in Mashpee were made available, would move here. So the wait list for the Housing Authority for elderly or handicapped residents is 2,707. For the family housing wait list, it is 3,624. And there are 289 households on the wait list for their rental voucher program. So to put that in some amount of context, Mashpee's population is currently around 15,060. Going back to 2010, I think we were around 14,000 and change. For the purposes of this kind of presentation, I'm operating in 2010 data figures. And so Chairman Isbitz from the Affordable Housing Committee about a year ago gave a presentation to the Planning Board that outlines the need in town, not just the need in terms of meeting our 10% minimum as mandated by Chapter 40B, but the actual shortfall of units per income level across the town. And those findings show relatively substantial cost burden across income levels, all the way up to 100% of the average median income, with the most substantial impacts being on those families earning 80% or below of the average median income, and certainly those earning less than 50% of the average median income. So for Leclerc Village, it's 39 units, 100% affordable, so every unit is restricted at or below 80% of the average median income. The analysis that Alan had presented back a year ago showed a housing shortfall of about 1,000 units in Mashpee for those earning below 80% of the average median income. So given that we are in a town with 15,000 people, we have 39 units up for grabs, and those individuals in town who might benefit from them are competing with a wait list of 3,600 people or more. It seems prudent to establish a local preference for this particular project. What I don't have prepared this evening is the extent of the local preference. That is something I think there's a nuance here that needs to be fleshed out further, and a conversation further with the trust. And so I am asking the trust to support, again, or approve a request for local preference for this project site, and perhaps authorize one or two of the trustees to work with me on defining or justifying the extent of the local preference to bring back to you for your final approval before we submit to Department of Housing and Community Development.
I think it's important that we do prioritize. I know a lot of towns have policies on that and develop a matrix Also familiar that the tribe has developed a matrix as well. You know, some of the items on here, not sure if they were presented in any order that's relevant, but the, you know, current residents, I do feel as though should be prioritized. Also, households with children attending the Mashpee schools. You know, I do like the direction you're going with the supporting tribal preference as well. The one item I didn't see on here was veterans. There is, veterans are allowed to be prioritized and should be. You know, as far as the hierarchy of that matrix, open for discussion, welcome input. You know, I guess I kind of could use some insight into the justification on, you know, municipal employees and employees of local businesses. You know, I feel as though personally that we should be hiring people that live in town and encourage that. I do want them to be able to afford to stay here. With the current housing crisis we're going through, that's challenging for everyone across all demographics. So any insight into that, I would welcome that input.
So what is presented for you here, those categories, are just those categories that are presented to municipalities in guidance format from DHCD. So in exact order, with no prescription from town staff as to what you should do. I just wanted to make you aware of what the preference categories are and have you discuss that in general. And if we can't come to any agreement tonight, which I doubt we will be able to, it would be great for the planning department to work with one or two members of the trust to continue working on perhaps a matrix to present to you to be connected to some sort of policy in the future. But again, we do want to keep working on local preference for Leclerc Village in the interim as we kind of develop a policy for you.
Yes.
So Evan, this also refers to as the policy for the Leclerc Village. Can this be going forward as a town, as a policy for the town? So this way we don't have to replicate this for any other housing development?
I do think we can probably do something that gives staff solid direction as more projects come ahead. But one thing that could potentially differ regarding local preference is what the unit mix is and what the income restrictions are across the unit types. I think maybe, I don't have a firm answer for you today, John. I think we can do something that has longevity, but I don't necessarily have an answer tonight.
Oh, I agree. I'm just thinking if, you know, I hate to like create the new wheel we're talking about two other developments already. Yeah, I'd love to see if we can create. I understand that it's gonna be a little bit different, but at the same time, the policy is the policy. If we all agree on preference, let's see if we can set up a policy to have a basic concept, and then every other new development can follow that same policy.
Yes, that would be great.
Some changes.
I think absent, substantial production of units in the short term, which is unlikely to happen given how difficult it is to bring a single unit of affordable housing online, that a policy that addresses the justification and necessity of the preference is something I'd be asking for you tonight. What it will change potentially project to project is the extent of that local preference. What groups are we trying to provide preference for? What residents, what business? I think that could potentially change or not, but that's I'm really asking for you to assist me in defining that.
So I see in your last paragraph, you had kind of stating that you're looking for the direction now, but then you're hopeful that we'll adopt it, so it is a policy of the town moving forward.
Yes.
Yes.
So my understanding is you're also looking for people to help you with this from the trust. Is that
I'd really
correct?
like the ability to work with a member of the trust on this particular policy so that we can present something with, membership from from this body back to you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to volunteer for that, if that's a possibility.
Sure, Greg. If it's fine with the board, have the board's support, fine.
Do you need just one, or you want two, or?
If the board is willing, I would love to have Chairman Isbitz on my team for this one. His expertise is unparalleled in this regard.
So two, that would be good.
Tom?
I have questions. So with this money that we're using, if state and federal money for affordable housing or workforce housing, I don't know what the difference is between the two of those, workforce and affordable. But aren't there restrictions as to who can, you can't just isolate a number of outside residents from not moving into these units, am I correct?
Well, there are still fair housing laws we need to comply with, so absolutely. We can't build in a local preference that disadvantages any other group, which is something we need to work through. There's a nuance to this that I think we need
What I
to.
was hearing earlier, just a short while ago, is that they were looking to, bring all residents in, just isolating Mashpee residents, but you really can't do that.
No, so local preference, only 70% of the units to be created in any particular project can be set aside for local preference. That's the top figure. So conceivably, 70% of the units at LeClaire Village would be 27 of those units. Would potentially be reserved for local residents. But local preference has its pros and cons. The preference doesn't sustain beyond the initial lottery. So the local preference gives priority to residents for the initial lottery. But if they leave, then we go back to the general waiting list. So pros and cons.
Right. That's what I was just looking for a little bit of clarification. And while we were on it, could you if you can clarify for me, workforce housing and affordable housing, what's the difference?
Well, generally, and I might ask Alan to piggyback off this, but affordable housing, as we're talking about in this particular context, is referring to an income level, which represents 80 individuals or households earning up to 80% of the average median income. We're finding, particularly in this region, that those earning well beyond 80% of the average median income are struggling to attain sustainable, long-term affordable housing. Those could be any moderate income earners earning 100% to like 150% of the average median income. And the federal government and the state has been generally responsive to that growing need with new financing programs to supplement what already exists to bring these units to fruition. Alan's done a little bit more research, I think, than I have in this regard, but that's my general understanding of that breakdown.
If I can add to that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mass Housing recently had a workforce housing program that they began, this is 3-4 years ago, maybe a little more. And they actually funded it for workforce housing units to the extent of $100,000 a year, $100,000 a unit, right down, up to a $3 million cap for any given project. And they define workforce housing as 60% of area median income up to 120% of area median income. And they said that was not a rigid figure, that they would vary that depending on the market and the need in each, for each project and each area the project was in. So there's no exact definition of that workforce housing, but that's generally what the case is. In the case of mass housing, there's actually an overlap between the HUD-defined 80% of area median income and lower, and the mass housing definition for workforce housing of 60% and up to 120, which could go higher than that. It depends on the project, the context, and what we can convince an agency like mass housing to do. So that's one thing. As far as local preference goes, I think it does establish in effect, a local set-aside. And does preempt an area need to the extent that people are not included in the local preference categories, which does include some from the area, like employees who may not live here are still part of the local need. If you don't fall in one of those categories and you really are not part of that 70% pool, and there's a fairly methodical way of proceeding on the eligibility for, and then eventually it's a lottery. So you can fill people in the category depending on all the applications you get, and then it is a lottery choice after that. So you never really can predict what the outcome will be, except that local preference would mean that 70% of the eventual selected candidates do fall under a local preference category if that's the number that's adopted for the development.
70%.
And what I'd add one more thing to that. This sometimes comes down to a negotiation between the higher levels of government, like the state or the federal government. The federal government is particularly concerned about the fair housing impact, and there is a balance that they're trying to achieve to ensure that there is a sufficient area impact, as well as the need for the local town. And they recognize that if a town's putting in all the effort and the need is in the town, they don't want to deny a fair participation by residents of the town in getting those units, but they are also trying to balance that off with a regional need. So sometimes they get involved and it's lower than 70%, and they dictate that in the end.
Is there any component of the funds being used for the project, federal funds? It is my understanding that, federal, wherever the money's coming from, if it's federal funds, that trumps, like HUD funds trump state funding and requirements and compliance. So there's a hierarchy of compliance. So I was just wondering if there's any federal funds being used on that project.
I'm sure there are federal funds, but I'm not sure whether it's the funding or the financing that dictates in terms of local preference. I know I've been involved with HUD-funded, HUD finance projects, and their local preference requirement or request would go to Fair Housing at HUD, and they are particularly concerned about the local preference requirement, and I've been subject to having the local preference request cut down substantially by the Fair Housing Office because they are more concerned about the regional impact than they are about the town impact. I don't think the state shares that, and I think to the extent that federal funds go through the state and the state is responsible for use of the federal funds, that I'm not sure the federal HUD Fair Housing Division gets involved in actually determining the final outcome. I think it's all on DHCD at the state level.
Nice, Alan.
The one question I had is the workforce housing, does that encompass the missing middle that I'm always hearing about? Is that, or just another term? I get confused a little bit myself.
Missing middle generally is referring to building or building typologies. So it doesn't necessarily pertain to any sort of income level. So generally, there's two ends of a housing spectrum, and one is the multifamily high-rise apartment building, down to the low end being the single-family detached dwelling, which is what the market is very good at incentivizing the construction of. What has been doing a poor job over the number of years for a number of considerations, that being financing or local zoning or other considerations, is the incentivization of the private sector to develop missing middle housing typology. So mid-rise apartment buildings, attached townhouses, garden apartments. The financing and local regulation has generally not done a good job of producing those types of units. So missing middle really is referring to building types as opposed to income levels.
Gotcha, thank you.
And I'd raise one concern about that as well. I think our concern is when we think of missing middle, we're thinking of basically workforce income levels, moderate income families with moderate income who in today's Cape Cod world can't afford most of the housing that's on the market, whether it's a home for purchase or a rental. And I think we need to be careful when we talk about middle, the
Missing middle.
the missing middle, which is a term that's been thrown around a lot, that what we really want in this context and in our committee is resulting rent or sale value for a home that in fact is affordable for the levels of income that we're talking about, where the need is greater and there is a gap between income and sale price or rental. And that isn't necessarily produced by missing middle housing that you can get. That talks about townhouses and other kinds of cluster developments that we don't see a lot of on the Cape. And you can easily get, in today's market world, a missing middle development that is totally unaffordable by the groups we're trying to serve. And we need to watch that concern as development occurs in town.
Excellent point. Richard?
This is to Evan. On these 24 units, are they going to be apartment dwelling? Are they be individual units? Are they going to be multiplex? How do you see it? And also, my other question would be, when it starts to be built, how much of green space are you putting in as a barrier?
Short
Because
answer.
there's two major roads there.
Short answer, Richard, is that all of that is generally undetermined at this time. Those types of determinations will ultimately, hopefully, be the product of the neighborhood engagement we'd like to facilitate. But if you're asking for my opinion, I think this site is ideal for a cottage court style development, smaller detached units, thoughtfully strewn upon the site, in terms more or less, Or the feasibility study also contemplates, a singular structure, multi-unit, multifamily apartment building. What we do know is that the greatest need at the moment that we're trying to meet is for rental units, so that we would anticipate prioritizing a rental project in the RFP more than we would an ownership project, but we wouldn't necessarily reject an ownership project, but we would be scoring a proposal with higher points, assuming that they would be rental. We can be prescriptive in the RFP regarding building type, density, site design, or we can be more general. For the 950 project, we were relatively general, given that there were three parcels kind of packaged together there. There were some unique constraints, and generally we wanted to see what an architect could do with the site. With 209, it's substantially smaller. There are two roadways adjacent. And so I think there's an opportunity to work with the neighborhood on understanding what are the types of housing they might support. So in that regard, I think we can only be prescriptive after the neighborhood tells us what might be something they'd like to see in the neighborhood.
Anyone else?
One more
Yes,
quick
sir.
one, Mr. Chair, thank you. Evan, as far as if we go down the road, and I know we're just as back to the policy
Yeah.
going forward, is there a way, or I'd ask you to look into if there was a possibility of keeping local preference beyond just the initial lottery period? Do you understand what I'm?
I will look into it, John.
That's-
It's my general feeling we can't, but I will look into it.
If we can, even if it's a drop-down percentage, because, just so everybody understands what I'm referring to is, when this, say it's 25 units, these 25 units go out, they have local preference, but as they leave, they vacate that property is no longer local preference.
Yeah, it's a general wait list.
So it could go to the general public. And I know that's down the road, but that's something, if we can retain local preference as much, a higher percentage as possible, just something to look into.
I will
That's all.
explore that and report back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this matter, you don't need any votes or anything from us?
If the trust has a general level of comfort with my working with Mr. McKelvey and Mr. Isbitz on producing a policy for local preference, I'll continue to do what needs to be done for 950 and then come back to you when we have the justification of the extent of the local preference figured out in some term that's ready for you to present to you all. That would be great.
Okay, a motion to have Greg
Support.
McGilvery and Alan Nisbet be the representatives from the trust to sit.
In a working group.
In a working group.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a first and second, all those in favor,
Yes.
say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Motion's unanimous.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
If there is no more business of the joint meeting, I take a motion to adjourn the joint meeting.
Second. A motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Good seeing you all.
Good seeing you.
If I could, Mr. Chair, due to the fact that we did have a posted public hearing at 6:40 and also a poll hearing at 6:35, I would respectfully request that those go before public comments. Because,
Okay, so I was going to just take a motion to accept the meeting minutes from October 17th. I'd accept a motion to approve Select Board meeting minutes as presented from our October 17th meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Hearing a first and second, roll call vote. Tom?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yes.
Carol? And I'm a yes. That motion's unanimous. Those minutes pass. So we're going to hold off on public comment as suggested, and we're going to go into our first hearing, public hearing. Clerk, if you could read the notice. Tom? This is for the pole and conduit hearing, 83 Red Brick Road, Eversource petition 8725164.
Yes, that one. Let me see it. You want the town's position on this? The town of Mashpee? Select Board will conduct a poll hearing at the petition number 8725164, dated October 5th, 2022, for NSTAR Electric and Eversource Energy proposal to install approximately 43 feet of conduit under the public road on Red Brook Road. The proposed location is necessary to provide electric service to number 83 Red Brook Road. Said hearing will take place at 6:35 PM on Monday, November 7th, 2022, at the Wacoit Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road, Mashpee.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, good evening. Marissa Jackson from Eversource Energy, just here to represent the company in case there was any questions regarding our petition. We received a request from the customer to provide underground service. So the best case scenario for us is to go from the closest existing pole, so we're not installing an additional pole along the roadway, run the conduit, and where the customer will install a handhole, we'll make connections and provide that service.
As a,
The audience.
does anyone, member of the board, have any questions, concerns at this time, before I open it up to the audience?
Nope.
Anyone from the audience have questions or concerns and want to speak to this? Catherine?
I just wanted clarification on how that connection is going to be made. As some of you may be aware, we just recently repaved Red Brook Road. There is a 3-year moratorium on any trenching of newly paved roads. So this is going to be mold under the road. There will be no trenching.
Absolutely. So we'll go from the pole, we'll bore under the roadway, and there'll be no trenching. And if there was a change in the plan, we would have to, come back for approval and stop any construction prior to moving forward.
Is that satisfactory?
If
Catherine?
that could just be conditioned as such, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that, Catherine.
Good point. Anyone else from the audience have questions or concerns on this hearing?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
Hearing a first and second, all those in favor of closing the public hearing on this matter?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Make a motion to approve it.
At this time, I'd accept a motion to approve as stated, with the
With the
condition.
condition, sir?
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
Just for a matter of full disclosure, this project is, the applicant is my girlfriend's son, so I just wanted to let everyone know that I'll be recusing myself on the matter. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
One recusal, myself. That motion passes. Next item, we have the public hearing on the proposed parking ban at Boyden Road in Mashpee. If you could, Tom, read the public notice.
Does anyone? I do.
Yes.
The Mashpee Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on the proposed parking ban on Bowden Road in Mashpee. Said hearing will be held Monday, November 7th, 2022, at 6:40 PM at the Recording Meeting Room in Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road, Mashpee, Mass. 02649. Residents are invited to attend hearing and email their questions, comments in advance of the meeting.
Thank
I'd
you.
just like to note, Mr. Chair, that we did notify all the abutters.
Okay. So any questions from members of the board before I open it up to the audience?
I'm good.
None at this time. I'd welcome anyone from the audience to come forward and speak to this matter with any questions, concerns, or interest. Yes, sir. Please come forward and state your name, speak into the mic, name and residence.
Sure. John Hagenstein. I'm a partner on 2 properties on Bowden Road, 37 and 43. And we got the butter notification, thank you. Just don't fully understand why. So I guess nobody from the town spoke to us about the reasoning behind the proposed ban. So we're coming here tonight first to kind of learn a little bit more about what's going on there, and then maybe Catherine could talk and kind of give us an update as to what it is, or?
Catherine would
First.
probably be the best one to speak to it. It was brought to our attention that the road's been significantly impacted as a result of parking and various use, and so there's a concern. Catherine, if you want to come forward and speak to that.
I can also read into the record before Catherine elaborates. Currently, there are no restrictions concerning parking along Bowden Road. The Plan Review Committee is recommending that a prohibition against on-street parking be approved. The background, please refer to the memorandum dated September 26, which I think Catherine can specify. As outlined, the current and proposed on-street parking along Bowden Road is negatively impacting the road's surface, shoulder, and drainage. Businesses are typically required to provide adequate parking, storage, and loading zones on their own property to support their use. There are no other town roads where on-street parking is permitted for a business. In fact, the Select Board has already approved a similar parking restriction on the south side of Echo Road. Since the restriction, there has not been an issue with on-street parking along that road. One of the issues was definitely the damage to the asphalt, and then it started to, quite frankly, look a little unsightly, including a dumpster at the end of the road. So I'll let the DPW director elaborate.
Sure, and then will public comment still be open after that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I think the town manager really summed up the issue. This has been a problem on Bowden Road. I actually was before the board a number of years ago with a similar recommendation. At that time, it was not approved. The thought that the businesses, knowing that what the problem was, would try to address the situation themselves. If nothing else, I think it's gotten worse. There is, parking of employee parking as well as delivery vehicles that park along the side of the road. The road shoulder has not been improved to accommodate such a use. And so it's resulted in, as the town manager read, the breakdown of the side of the road, siltation of our drainage structures, which affects the ability of the drainage to function correctly. So we're just trying at this point. It actually came up at plan review recently when John was before the committee for the new property that they had just purchased, and had proposed to do some employee parking along the roadside. So this has been an ongoing issue that we're trying to address. You know, we're more than happy to try to work with the property owners, but I think it would have to be something that they're willing to step up and help address, and not just place the burden on the town to take care of.
How many storm structures in that area, that section of the road that's
I
being
believe
impacted?
there are a total of 6.
Down in that lower area?
In the lower area, there's, along the entire length, there's, I believe, 6 with additional capacity off of that.
Thank you. You don't recall the frequency of maintenance required?
So,
Cleaning out?
So certain roads, we do clean twice a year. This is, most of our industrial areas, we do clean twice a year in terms of the catch basins, as well as the street sweeping.
Is there an associated cost per structure?
It varies. There's the cost, our bid costs for cleaning, but then there's also disposal costs. Unfortunately, catch basin cleanings are considered hazardous waste by the state, so we have to dispose of them in a licensed landfill. So there's more than just the per basin cost associated with the cleaning.
Did that answer your question, sir? Did you have further comment, concerns?
I have further comments, if that's all right.
Sure, coming up.
So thank you, Catherine. I also, part of the question too is like, what is the parameter of the ban? So what is, you know, I do know I have employees that as we developed the property and made it, we made it eligible basically to be able to have parking on it. We put our own $40,000 drainage system on our property. That was a requirement. And now actually, so I'm invested just as much as in the drainage as you are, because we're actually taking all of the overflow from the road into our property now from the failed drains. So I do know they're failed. I do know that it's not just a cleaning issue, and like day after that they're clean, they still overflow and are failed. It's been that way for the 7 years that we've been on the road. I've talked to many other owners and the previous owner of our property, and he said the same thing. It's been an issue for a long time. I think that there's probably a bigger project there that needs to happen that's outside of what we're talking about tonight. But I have talked to just about every business owner on the street that represents, some of them are condo units, so not everyone in every condo unit, but it represents 100% of the street frontage. And nobody had any issue with parking on the street. I understand if there's an issue during a snowstorm and we have employee parking in the way, I think a snow ban might be something we could talk about. But I would like to maybe do this offline and we can come up with a solution that maybe we can go back to the board as a team together that with a proposal that we could vote on. I just think that I'm learning about this right now. I'm trying to picture a point on the street that we have erosion. There's someone's parking like driveway that I think the corner's a little bit eroded. Other than that, I don't know of much. I don't know if there's anyone else in the audience here that might want to speak up on as far as property owners, but it's a little bit. And you're right. We did talk to the zoning board of appeals a few months, maybe half a year ago, and they did bring up controlling our wastewater on the property, which we did. So, But the parking side, we did say we pull parking off the street, and my business has. I would just say it's, it's having a ban. There's a lot of deliveries that come in overnight. Truckers drive across the country for lumber deliveries at the lumber yard, boat haulers and boat deliveries up at the front of the street. Our business has plenty of deliveries that come, and the guys, they get in at midnight and they have to park, and then they deliver it when we open the gates in the morning. I'm certain it's probably the same way with other, the generator company on the street, same thing. So there's a parking ban outright. I think maybe it's the right answer, but I don't think we've talked about it enough offline to be able to. So I'd ask the board maybe to consider a continuance, and maybe we can work together and come back to you with a proposed solution.
Mr. Town Manager.
What I was going to suggest, Mr. Chair, anyone that is here for this purpose be allowed to speak, but beyond that, the board continue this public hearing and provide staff the opportunity, specifically my office, to sit down with any of these concerned business owners and the DPW director for the sole purpose of coming back to you with a satisfactory resolution. But I just want to make it clear that the environmental concerns of the town are going to have to be satisfied in any resolution.
Absolutely. That's fair.
Reasonable?
I think I totally agree. So, thank you.
Anyone else from the, anyone else want to speak to this matter?
Good evening. Dave Pena, I'm also a landowner on the street. I own the building. The very end, Mr. Collins mentioned the dumpster being on the street. So from time to time, we're at a dead end, and I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the town put boulders at the end of the road. So every time trucks come to deliver to Bosun's, Batello's, Willow Bend, they would use that area to turn around. Now that the boulders are there, they back up, and maybe that's what's causing the erosion. The only erosion I could see is the condo unit that's across from my place is where a lot of deliveries come in, and maybe the road there is getting eroded from the trucks having to back. I mean, they've hit I have rocks in front of my place in the sign, and they've hit that a bunch of times and moved them and stuff like that. But maybe that's causing some of the erosion of the road. I don't know. But yes, I am the guilty party. Sometimes the trucks come in at night. We throw an empty dumpster in the street. Maybe it sits there for 2 days and it goes back out. They're not there long term. I know it probably shouldn't be there, but it's the end of the road and up against the rocks. And the part of the drainage, I've been there since '08. And when I bought the building in '08, I was required by the town to, same thing as John had mentioned. And we have a drain right in the very beginning. The driveway pitches down, and our drain is right there. We take on a lot of the road water too. And I'm willing to work with Catherine, Rodney. The whole street, as John had mentioned, we have talked several people. We thought we'd get more of a following tonight, but I guess it's just me and John.
We figured we'd get your attention when we got the notices out.
Well, it's my livelihood, you know?
Yeah.
I get kids. It's hard enough to keep a living as it is right now, you know?
Yep, understood.
Fuel costs and everything else, we got to battle.
I think we'll get a resolution to you.
All right, thank you. So I guess we asked for, I'd entertain a motion to have a continuance to provide opportunity for the parties to get together with the town manager's office and come back with a resolution.
Yes, please.
So, second.
Hearing a first and second, all those in favor?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
So that was, I might have done that out of sequence. We have to close the public hearing.
Yes. No, we're continuing it,
Oh,
so we
we're
don't
continuing
close
it,
it
all
until
right.
we come back.
Yep.
Here.
So at this time, we'll go back to the standard agenda and take public comment.
Just want to mention, Mr. Chair, that the assistant is grabbing the phone numbers of anybody that's interested in getting together with us on voting. Thank you.
Appreciate it. First one on the list is Karen Faulkner.
If you'll start the timer, I'll pass this out.
Okay.
Doesn't count, right?
You can just hand it to us and we can pass them down.
Too funny, Karen.
Yes, if you
Okay.
could state your name and
Yeah.
address.
Karen
for the-
Faulkner, Asher's Path West. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Collins,
Good evening.
and Mr. Taylor, wherever you are. I'm speaking to you tonight as a resident of Mashpee and not as a planning board member. I'm asking you to appoint Arden Russell to the Affordable Housing Committee. If you would, please take a look at the handout on page 2. This is your Select Board Policy 011, Appointment Policy for Boards, Commissions, Committees, and Councils. On page 2, I've highlighted what I believe are the pertinent parts of my argument in favor of Ms. Russell. The Board, Commission, Committee, or Council on which the vacancy exists should interview all applicants unless it is totally impractical. That has happened. As the interview proceeds, each member will prepare his/her evaluation of the candidates, and at the conclusion of the interview, will provide his/her recommendation to the Board, Commission, Committee, or Council chairperson. Candidates shall be judged on a merit-based principle, and recommendations shall be made based on a consistent evaluation method that considers the candidate's qualifications and suitability. And the suitable ratings are strongly recommended, recommended, recommended with hesitation, and not recommended. The last highlighted is such recommendations must always be in the best interest of the town and consistent with the provisions of this policy. Under the merit-based principle, a recommendation must be based on the experience, knowledge of the subject matter, competence, and ability of the applicant to do the job. Factors such as political affiliation, ethnicity, gender, or personal connections may not be considered when making this appointment. If you look at Arden's resume, which is the last page of this little packet here, you see she has vast work experience in affordable housing as housing coordinator for the town of Barnstable. This renders her ready to sit on the Affordable Housing Committee and do the work today. No lag time, no training. She can call on a deep reservoir of knowledge and experience to find the best affordable housing plans going forward. The Select Board policy on appointments requires that recommendations be made not only on the qualifications of the applicant, but also suitability. Arden possesses personal integrity, ability to work collaboratively, and certainly enthusiasm for the subject matter, attributes which should make this board more productive, this committee. Her life's work and passion for 25 years plus has been all about developing and implementing strategies to create affordable housing. I urge you, ladies and gentlemen, to follow your own policy, this policy right here, of merit-based selection, and appoint Arden Russell to the Affordable Housing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Faulkner. The next name I have on the list is Lynn Barbie.
Good evening. Lynn Barbie, Surf Drive.
Hello.
I appreciate that the Select Board is following the process to correct the open meeting law violation of the June 14th, 2022 session of the Affordable Housing Committee by having a new interview with the candidates. I want to state clearly that I have nothing against realtors. It is not an easy profession. I also want to state clearly that I have nothing against Gary Schuman personally. My issue is with the Affordable Housing Committee. This group seems to believe that a realtor with sales of houses of $765,000, $660,000, and $450,000 is a good fit for the Affordable Housing Committee. This is from his own website. The same realtor is, quote, certified by NAR as a resort and second home specialist, again, from his website. The same realtor has also posted a short-term rental, which was very good, but it was only seasonal on his website. There is nothing wrong with Mr. Schuman doing this. It is his livelihood and the business he shares with his wife. It is just the wrong message to our community of the priority for the affordable housing. The realtor may care about the work of the committee, but at the same time, he is posting his real estate business in a page 3 ad in the local paper. Clearly, this is a priority for his livelihood. I have here the samples of the paid advertisement from page 3 from October 21, October 28, and November 4. These ads are not in the real estate section of the enterprise, but on page 3 of the main section. This is all fine and good for Mr. Schuman and his business. But it sends a mixed message at best and the wrong message at worst of the priorities of the Affordable Housing Committee. There is already one realtor on the committee. Meanwhile, we have a candidate who has consistently worked for and spoken out for affordable housing. Arden Russell has years of experience working for affordable housing. As the committee chair knows, Mr. Isbeth, Arden and I have on several occasions over the past year or so attended the Affordable Housing Committee meeting as interested and concerned citizens. It is incredible to me that the committee members who should be prioritizing affordable housing are not interested in the vast experience and commitment of Arden Russell, the most qualified candidate. I hope the Select Board will act on its responsibility to appoint the most qualified candidate, who is Arden Russell. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rosa Whiting.
Rosa Whiting, Cutlass Lane. I don't have a lot more to add to the comments of Ms. Faulkner and Ms. Barbie, other than to ask the Select Board to take the concerns and interests of Mashpee into its best interest in selecting the best candidate for the Affordable Housing Committee, and that is Arden Russell. I have worked with her on a number of projects. She is very prepared all of the time. She's very responsible and collaborative in her activities. And she's obviously, you've read her resume, you know Mr. Schuman, excuse me. She's the most qualified person, and Mashpee deserves the best qualified person. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Craig Mann. Good evening.
Good evening. This is Craig Main, Old Colony Drive. I'm here on my own accord, not my professional status. I'll keep it short, as John Cahill would say. My comments are limited to the residential exemption. I'm not here for the second homeowners like some people. I'm not here for myself as a homeowner, and I may actually benefit from it. I'm here because of the unintended consequences on renters. If you implement the residential exemption, landlords are not eligible. Therefore, who are they going to pass the increased taxes on? they're going to pass that on to the renters. As far as I can tell, there's about 1,000 to 1,200 year-round rentals in town between condos, homes, and trailer parks. All of those pay rent. So as far as I'm concerned, if you implement the residential exemption, yeah, you may decrease my taxes by $40 or $50 a month, or 30 or 20, whatever you choose, but you're going to increase the rent to those people by $20, $30, $40, $50 a month. That, to someone in the rental market, might stop them from being able to own a home. And that I have a problem with. I'm not looking for a reduction in my taxes so that someone can't get out of the rental situation and be a homeowner like myself and many others. So that is what I would like you not to do, is not pass it. With the increased utilities and all other expenses that are coming along, the rental market and the renter person who wants to become a homeowner doesn't need another hurdle to jump over. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Marjorie Heck. Hello.
Hi, Marjorie Hecht, Hoopole Road. Good evening, everyone. I'm going back to the first three speakers' subject. I'm speaking again in support of Arden Russell for appointment to the Affordable Housing Committee, and I urge the Select Board to vote for her. As an affordable housing specialist, as you've heard, Arden knows what's needed, what kinds of funding are available, and how to solve problems. She has a proven track record in securing funding and getting affordable housing projects accomplished. Isn't this what Mashpee needs? At their second meeting on the matter, the Affordable Housing Committee listened to Arden and acknowledged her expertise in every aspect of affordable housing. But then they voted for the other candidate, Gary Schuman. And I have nothing against Mr. Schuman. He's a real estate agent who has admittedly no experience in affordable housing. I don't know why the Affordable Housing Committee voted to pass over someone whom they recognized as an expert. It was stated at the committee hearing that the fact that Mr. Schuman had no knowledge of the subject except his life experience would bring a, quote, fresh perspective, unquote, to the committee. Yes, that might be a possibility, except that in this case, someone with a proven record of affordable housing success was the other candidate. This is not a good model for encouraging volunteers with specific expertise to apply to fill vacancies on town committees. Mashpee has many retirees with skills and experience. This kind of decision can discourage people from volunteering and also raises questions about committee politics. I've puzzled over the committee's decision. Perhaps the chair wanted another male on the committee. He now has 3 females. Or is it that Mr. Schuman would represent the views of the Realtor Association and Mashpee Commons? Appointing Arden Russell to the Affordable Housing Committee will be in the best interest of moving Mashpee's affordable housing program forward, and equally important, in letting the public know that the Select Board values expertise above cronyism and special interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heck. We have one more, John Hagenstein.
I think he was the gentleman that spoke here.
Oh, okay.
So he's also.
Oh, right, yeah. Catherine Laurent, if we have another matter, discussion approval of the extension of the intermunicipal agreement.
So, as you all may be familiar, the the town shares in ownership of the Upper Cape Regional Transfer Station that's located on Joint Base Cape Cod. For the last several years, we've had an agreement with Cavoso Disposal Corporation for use of that facility. They pay the town's rent for the property. The interest at the time the contract was signed was that it kept the transfer station operational and viable for potential future use by the towns. Both the IMA and the agreement with Cavosa are due to expire at the end of this calendar year. I'm recommending that both be extended. The term allowed in the IMA is through June 30th of 2016, or 26, excuse me. And with Cavosa, it would be for an additional 3 years, or December 31st, 2025. I'm sure some of you have read the Enterprise edition from this past Friday. Needless to say, all of the other members of the Board of Managers were rather taken aback by the vote by the town of Bourne to not recommend extension of the IMA. We had a meeting of the board on October 18th where this matter was discussed, and the representative from the town of Bourne, Dan Barrett, was in agreement with extending the IMA. He then turned around and recommended to his respective select board that they not extend it. I have been in communication with the Board of Managers Council, who is also Mashpee's town council, and he has indicated that the board can move forward with a vote, that if Bourne is not interested in continuing to be a participating member, then it would just become a three-member consortium that owns and operates the facility.
Did they give a reason, Catherine?
Yes and no. As you may, again, know, they own and operate their own landfill, and they have recently been permitted through the Cape Cod Commission for an additional cell. So they, looking at, I guess, their own best interests, their solid waste options are satisfied for the foreseeable future, where the rest of the communities in the Upper Cape, as well as the entire Cape, do not have that luxury of having our own landfill to use. So again, one of the interests when we signed the IMA most recently back in 2018 was to keep the rail operational and viable for future use. Just this past year, the Cape Cod Commission conducted a study looking at disposal options as those options in Massachusetts are shrinking. There is not the capacity, solid waste capacity, that is needed to support all of the municipalities. And so we would be looking at potentially transporting our solid waste out of state. Rail would be the most cost-effective method for accomplishing that. So having a rail facility that's available for our use, for potentially other communities on Cape Cod, it doesn't make sense to give that up.
Any questions from members of the board?
I have a question.
Yes, Mikhail.
Since Bourne has pulled out of the agreement, is there a downside? Does that change the agreement? Or does that change Mashpee's responsibilities or the cost? Or what does it change, if anything?
So at this point, there is no debt associated with the facility. There are no operational expenses associated with the facility at this time. We, in fact, are collecting rent from the current operator of the facility. If the towns in the future do decide to take back operation of the transfer station, either amongst the member towns or regionally for use of, for transport of solid waste. It could also be recycling, composting, other C&D, other materials. There may be costs associated with that operation at that time, but currently there are no costs.
Thank you.
So as part of Michaela's question, that brings me to, it looks like we receive revenue from the CDC as a result of the
Correct.
Agreement. And so would that increase the revenue if it wasn't a four-party
It
agreement?
would, correct. It's shared equally amongst the members.
Okay.
A motion to approve the extension of the intermodal agreement with the town of
A regional
Val-
transfer station.
regional
Second.
transfer station.
Second.
Hearing a first and second, any discussion further? No? Michaela, roll call vote.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That vote's unanimous. Motion passes. Next item, we have the license agreement for Robert B. Hour Incorporated for an office trailer at the transfer station.
So the town recently signed contracts with Robert B. Hour for the collection system having to do with our wastewater plan. Robert B. Hour approached the town about locating a field office. They identified the transfer station as the most viable site just because of its close proximity to where they will be working, and the fact that there really isn't any other municipally owned property that they could avail themselves of. There is an area next to an existing office trailer for the transfer station that would be able to accommodate their request. Town council recommended that we sign a license that just spells out what they are allowed to do within that area of the transfer station, as well as the term. So that is the license that he has drafted that you have before you tonight for approval.
And so this wouldn't be, it would just be for office, so it's specify who's able to utilize. I mean, I'm just concerned that, how much traffic will it increase in the area? It would just be your key supervisors, typically in and out, or would it also be your contractors and meeting space and things of that nature, is my concern.
Exactly, and I believe it's only during the tenure of the project, and it was initially brought to my attention, and it was forwarded to council because of the legal exposure, and because it's obviously town property, the decision was to bring it before the board. But I don't believe there's going to be unreasonable traffic.
It's really for the construction supervisor for Robert B. Hour. They're limited to the trailer, a portable toilet, and 2 parking spaces.
Chair.
Yes, John?
So Catherine, so they're basically renting space on a municipal property, correct? But they're not renting.
They're not, it's a license. They're using the town property. They would not be paying other than reimbursing the town for any electrical costs.
Right, so that's, I was actually making a comment more about like a joke, because they're not renting, so like anybody else that uses our property, and it's their for-profit. They're making, I know they're providing a service to us, but everybody that provides a service to the town with a contract, do we provide them free office space? I'm just looking at it from, I understand there's a contract here, by legal, looking at this from, making sure that we're not the liability factor, but, I mean, the fact is, are we not opening up set a precedent here where we're giving space and availability on town land for free. And we are also paying them to do a job under a contract. So are we going to get rebates when there's cost overruns for wastewater and things like that? Enough said. Next question. Just curious.
I would defer that to the town manager.
I don't know, he had a puzzling face when I was hit.
I understand your point. I understand your concern. In the big scope of things, I was focusing, and this was brought to us. I mean, we obviously didn't ask for this. This was brought to our attention. I look at it as the interests that are being served to the town, but I understand your point. Well, other people serve the interests of the town, and are they given the same consideration? This is the first, to my recollection and to my knowledge, that we've ever dealt with this. But given the scope of the project, the necessity of the project, the importance of the project, and trying to expedite the project, I felt that it was worthwhile to bring to your attention. I mean, obviously, I didn't make the decision to put it out there. So it's kind of being dumped in your lap, but I understand your point, but I think we can, well, you can, if you wish to, grant it without getting into that potential quandary that you're trying to describe.
And if I may just add, the town has had other construction projects where field offices have been located. So it's typical more with a building construction. When we built the new library, there was a construction trailer for the contractor there. The wastewater treatment facility, that contractor will have a trailer on the plant site. So I think the difference is that this isn't a set, single property that's owned by the town. It's, 6.5 miles of roadway, not just one property where they're working.
Wouldn't it make sense to consolidate them at the facility site, the wastewater facility site? I mean, the new contractor that's building their structure is going to have to put a pole in and service it with electricity, so couldn't they piggyback it and kind of be adjacent? I mean, just throwing it out there.
Different
Has that come
contracts,
up? No, I understand that, but they're going, to Catherine's point, they're going to require a site trailer on site, and so I didn't know if that had come up.
It's still our property, so, yes, two different elements, but I understand your point. We could check into that. I don't want to answer that for Robert Biara, but it's something that could be researched.
I think we could take a look at it. I think our is looking to start work sooner than the plant. There is some site work that would be required at the plant before they could locate their trailer there. They need to clear, regrade, et cetera. There is existing, they would be tying into an existing meter at the transfer station. So they have ready power, which was one of the attractions for this location. But certainly, you could limit or require that be explored with the contractor for the treatment facility, whether or not that trailer at that point in time could be relocated to that location.
So to that point, I think maybe if the term of the license was until the other area gets prepped and ready and has the utilities and everything there, then it would limit the amount of traffic in and out for Robert Howard to the transfer location by consolidating it over with the other site. I think once the power and utilities is put in.
And
if that's an
possibly,
option.
if the board authorized me to proceed as requested until such time that the alternative is available, then I think we can go back to Robert B. Hour and say, look, we're being convenient and considerate, given the fact that we want to get this going, but at the same time, your point is well taken.
I think it makes sense to get them started early. You know, it's little effort to do, to get them in there and get them going. But, you know, once the other area is prepped and ready, it does, to John's point, you know, keep everything together over there, so it's not interfering with the transfer station activity.
Okay.
John?
Just to kind of fall back up, you talked about like other construction sites and things like that. I would argue that that's different because that would be part of more of the construction project, porta potty on site, things like that. That's all part of the contract. This is something separately and unique as far as I know it. We have separate contracts for wastewater. We signed a contract, I believe it's 2 with Robert B. Hour, 2 of the 3 contracts that were with Robert B. Hour, I believe. I could be wrong. But in those contracts, it has nothing to do with a free office space located on town property. I do believe that that would open the door and set a precedent that, well, you did it here, why can't I get an office space? So, and again, I'm not saying how much of a rent, but we're getting nothing out of this, and they're using town property, you know, for something, and it's for profit. If this was a nonprofit, this would not even, I wouldn't be making the statement. But again, back to, are they gonna, can we call this up when we have an override, when we have there's something that goes above the budget? Which you know there will be. There's always going to be cost overruns on this wastewater budget. And he represents 2 contracts, and we're giving him office space for free and a couple parking spaces. I'm not really worried about personally traffic. I mean, how much traffic can be with 2 cars and someone working in the office supervisor. I get it. I just, in my opinion, I think it sets a precedent with, it's a free space for a for-profit business.
Would you feel better if we charged them a fee?
Well, that's my point. I mean, I'm not saying what the fee would be. So that's, but not charging them anything, I just think, I'm not okay with that. It's my opinion. I'm only.
I don't know what the rate is for.
I have a question. Oh,
I think Tom was first.
So I guess my concern is, we're not talking about the total length of this project, that this is going to be a free electricity for this mobile office.
They're paying for electricity.
No, they're going to pay for electricity, Tom.
He's just looking for rent on the
They're
10
gonna
by
pay
30
For
space.
just to park the vehicle there?
Space.
Yeah.
I mean, the road that's being, 151 right now, there's right on the corner of the school lot there, they have pipe and all that material. Do we get rent for that? No. We don't.
Part of the work
Well,
envelope.
why are we doing it at the?
That's a state project.
That's part of
It's
the
not
work
us.
envelope.
I'm just saying, it's like, we're talking pennies here on a $100 million project with this. To me, it doesn't matter. I mean, for that, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, I can see it, you give them a grace period for 4 weeks or something, or 2 months to get up and established and tied in, wired up, and then you can start paying for the electric bill. That's all. I don't see any need for this, with, you know, dealing with lots of money.
Michaela?
I think that point's well taken with regard to just the statement that having the trailer close to the site is going to facilitate oversight. So I have a clarifying question, I guess. How do people see this as different from putting a trailer on site if you're building a library or a school, where you have to have a trailer and you have to have people going in and out and you have to have oversight? I don't see the difference, but maybe Maybe I need to see the difference.
It's my understanding that typically you put the trailer at the job site location, so it lies within the work envelope. So it's part of the work area, and that's typically how it's done. Where this is linear to town manager's point, you know, it's a linear project within the roadway layout. This part of the contract is separate than the actual construction at the facility. And so you can't, it's a moving project area. And, you know, if it's going to expedite them getting them out there and getting started, then, you know, I don't know what you charge for rent on a 10 by 30 trailer, and then, 40 feet of parking, I mean, for 2 vehicles. You know, I don't know what the rental is going to be on that. It doesn't sound like that much square footage to, I don't think you're going to negotiate cost overruns with your savings.
We're not, and we're not going to do it either when it's free either.
You know, I understand your point, and I think it would be good to shorten the term, to put it to maybe a year, I mean, I don't know the sequence of the 3 contracts, but if we try to consolidate them at the earliest point so that they're on site, I think it would be, to John's point, it would satisfy it, so it's not the entirety of the project. You know, 2024 is a long time.
And I might have triggered this because I sent it over to council out of concern of any liability for anybody coming and going, and I just felt I needed to do that as soon as it was determined to be town property. So, like I said, once it went over to council, obviously he's going to be very cautious, hence the document that you received.
That's all. Yeah. I'm in favor of it myself, you know, with a shortened term.
Yeah, and what I can do, if it would satisfy Selectman Cotton, is I can, if you authorize me to proceed with a little bit of discretion, you know, maybe we can sit down with them and see where it goes. I mean, I don't want to get into details publicly because they're going to know tomorrow what I'm going to be saying, but we can certainly talk to them about the scope and your concerns.
I'd be okay with that. I'd be comfortable with leaving it in his hands.
So you want to come back?
So
with
entertain a motion to.
Well, I don't want to wait until the next meeting.
I'd
just
entertain a
assume-
motion.
Or I would
Authorize
respectfully
the-
request
Yeah, I'd authorize
that you,
the town to authorize the use of the property for the office. I have no problem with that. The town manager can deal with that and get it going, and eventually, if we have to charge for the meter, but let them get started, let them get the unit up there. Let's start moving. Let's get this job done. We've been waiting long enough.
You want to second that, John?
I don't know, well, I don't know what that. I don't know what that. All right, so I'd like to, motion to recommend approval of the license to use the transfer station for Robert B. Hour with the understanding that the town manager would come to a final agreement on potential term and rent and/or whatever he felt comfortable with.
Do I hear a second?
Second. Is
Having
that
a-
satisfactory to the,
It's pretty clear.
yes, but just for clarity, I am authorized to proceed if,
Authorized,
you are authorized?
Yes.
is our understanding.
okay, just,
Added to the motion.
Roll call vote, Carol?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
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 Okay. And I'm a yes as well, that vote's unanimous. Thank you, Catherine. Presentation on proposed residential tax exemption, setting of the fiscal year 2023 tax rate, future budgeting. Finance Director Dawn Thayer and Treasurer Tax Collector Craig Mann. Assessor Joe Gibbons also. Thank you for your patience, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us tonight. This is going to be brief, or as brief as we can make it. I'm just going to speak briefly before I turn it over to the Director of Assessing. As most of you know, we are currently in the process of setting the FY23 tax rate. We're working on the tax recap right now. It should be done in the, well, at least our part should be done in the next day or so. And from that point on, we'll put it in the, it will eventually go to your hands for review and a vote on the determination of whether you want to split the tax rate, exemptions, and that kind of information. But I just wanted to point out that one thing that we seem to forget sometimes is this 23 tax rate that we're currently setting is based on the budget that we created last year. So we're always 1 year behind. And that's one of the points that I wanted to make in the memo, was that just to make sure that we're aware of, as we move forward, wastewater, as we all know, is a big item that we're going to have on our, as part of our operations soon. And there's going to be other expenses. Inflation drives up the cost of everything. So it's prudent to keep in mind that what decisions are made in the next 4 or 5 months regarding the budget is what we're going to feel next year. So a lot of times we forget that. And as we move forward, we're not, here to sound the alarm or anything. It's just more of a matter of being aware that what decisions are made here in the next 6 months will not be known, or at least will not come out as far as your taxes go until the following fiscal year. That's just one thing I wanted to bring to the attention of everyone, because sometimes we forget about that. That piece of it, I should say. I'm going to turn it over to the Director of Assessing, Mr. Gibbons, and he's going to speak briefly about the residential exemption, some items that maybe we were not all aware of, actually, previously. And I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Dawn. Before I begin, I just wanted to say that, and Dawn touched upon this earlier, setting tax rates is a fluid situation. It goes from 1 year to the next before you know it, and the decisions you made back in budgeting last October, November, December affect the tax rate setting that we're going to do right now. And in 2 weeks, we'll be doing the classification hearing. I'll just give a brief update right now where we're at with regard to the FY23 tax rate. My department received word last week that the town of Mashpee had received preliminary certification for the FY23 values. At this time, I'd like to thank all the other departments that helped us out in the year, the prior staff, that most of whom have retired, and the current staff that we have now, that all their hard work and diligence led us to be the first community in the region, first quarterly community to have their values approved. Jennifer Williams is our DOR representative, and she handles most of Cape Cod and Plymouth, and we were the first town to get certified. It was a little bit later than we had thought, but due to COVID and other vendor issues with all the reval companies, it was backed up, but we were the first town to get approved. And at the classification hearing in 2 weeks, I'll go into more detail about those values, but basically the residential values increased 22% from fiscal 22 to fiscal 23, and the commercial industrials increased 13.5%. I'll go into much more detail at the classification hearing, but the good news is we received our certification. We also had our new growth approved. It was almost $805,000. The 5-year average was $720,000, so we're a little over the 5-year average. We were a tad less than last year, which was $817,000, but we're in that ballpark. So steady growth is good, and we received that approval after we got our final certification. So once again, I'd like to thank all the other departments, the town manager's office, the finance office, and all the other departments that helped us with that. We're not in the boat by ourselves. This is a team effort, and I think that's very important. Now, at classification in 2 weeks, we'll go into detail. We'll have everything ready in all the scenarios. And this is a good segue into the residential exemption, where we're at with regard to the residential exemption. In the handout that I just gave you, as of this morning, we had 2,109 vetted applications for properties for the residential exemption. This is sharply different than the estimates both my predecessor and myself had come up with. When we ran the addresses by zip code in the past few years, talking to Jason, we had roughly 5,700. We thought there'd be, the high point would be 5,700 people that would qualify. And we only qualified 2,100. We do have another 100 or so applications that are still being vetted, but we had far fewer applications than we thought we'd get. You have-
Why
You
is,
referred
why
to-
is that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, why is that, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, we sent letters to everybody, both non-domiciliary people and domiciliary people. It's been on, it's been in the newspaper. It's been on cable. So I really am at a loss. Someone said to me, maybe it's because of a lack of interest. I don't know. Maybe some people don't support, even domiciliary people don't support it, so they're not going to apply right now.
Well, we have found that out with the letters that we've been getting, no question.
Yeah. And the problem that this poses is that if it's accepted, our liability on the overlay is huge. Because if we only have 2,200 people that are pre-qualified, all the figures are based on
Those people.
those people. And people still have till April 1st to apply for that if it's accepted. And all those monies, so if we had 1,000 more people, just say 1,000 out of those 3,500 come in, we have to write a check for 1,000 times whatever the exemption's worth, $1,000, $900, whatever, $1,200, $1,500, whatever it's worth. And that money has to be raised. And when it has to be raised, it means it has to come out of the pie.
Right.
It's got to come out from somewhere.
Right.
That's one of the problems that was communicated both by my predecessor and by me in the summer meeting on the two ways that this can go if you get too many or you get too few applicants. So that's one of the big issues that I wanted to bring to your attention. The other is one issue that didn't come up, both I didn't realize it, and my predecessor, Jason, didn't realize it. I only found it out because I went to an assessing, Barnstable County Assessors meeting, and I met with a couple other assessors, Barnstable being one of them. And even if you accept the residential exemption, in your 5-year certification, which for us would be in fiscal '28, which would be in calendar year '27, as part of the approval process, one of the boxes on there is you need to revet all the RX applications again. So we would have to send out applications again in 5 years, okay, at a cost to our office of, I don't know, $20,000, $25,000 to do that. So it's something to consider that I didn't want to spring on you at the classification hearing. But honestly, I didn't know about it, and my predecessor didn't know because it wasn't in any of the pros and cons letters or memos that went to the previous select boards when that was discussed. So that was something new, and I didn't want to spring it on at the last minute. In summation, on the residential exemption, those 2,100 qualified properties represent 36% of what we thought were the eligible of the 5,700. So it's a little over a third of what we thought the most could be. I can take any questions if anyone, and then we'll get into the.
One question I have is the 5,700 number that you estimated to be eligible, was that based on 2020 assessments or 2019 assessments?
That was based on the spreadsheets that were for fiscal year '22, which would have been January 1st of '21. Based on when we ran, well, I didn't run it, but when my department ran it, the zip codes of the mailing addresses for the residential properties.
I mean, the reason why I ask is I'm wondering with the recent jump in assessed values, did that qualify, disqualify, like what was, how did that affect the spreadsheet that you're using for eligibility?
It has no effect on eligibility, David.
All right.
That second page of what I gave you was it's a good segue to the average value. But one of the positive things about the residential exemption is, you know, it's not affected by your average value. Qualification, for qualification purposes. Because the average value went from, as you see, 641 last year to 770,000. What it would affect is the amount that you would get if you qualified for the residential exemption. Because if the select board voted 5% or 10% or 20%, it's 20% of the average value property.
So when are we going to get, so we have to make a decision by our next meeting?
In 2 weeks.
Yes.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in 2 weeks, we're going to get these scenarios of 5%, 10%, and all that?
Yeah, you will get these
we have to make
percentages,
it-
because we just had the values certified on Friday. So I need, I need a couple days to put this together.
All right.
So you will get it in your packet. You will have it in your packet when you normally get the packet.
So it's just like
Thursday.
a week and a half on that Thursday or Friday.
Now, can you explain to me, how will this, if we did go with the residential
Exemption.
exemption, how does that affect our 2024 budget? How does that come into play? Because the money's just going to shift. You're still going to have the pot of money, right?
It does not allow us to raise any additional funds, so there
Okay.
will be no additional funding. All it does is shift the tax burden.
Okay, all right.
Now, it may affect the budgeting for my department going forward.
Right.
As I had communicated last summer when we spoke. You know, Barnstable, now granted, they're a bigger town, okay? I spoke with the previous director there and the current director, and they both were in accord, and they're not in accord on many things, but they both agreed that they could allocate one person to just doing the residential exemption work all year long. Now, for us, it's a little smaller, so it might be a third of a person or a quarter of, you know, but it's substantial to a small department. So there is a cost inherent in it.
Kayla, you had a question?
That was part of my question. Another part is, so we're looking at single-family homes only.
No, all residential, so it'd be single families, residential
Through
condominiums.
multi. Okay. Through
For their
multifamily
residential
homes?
exemption?
Through multifamily homes? I'm coming
Yes.
to the question about renters. I guess that's what I was thinking.
We don't have many multifamily homes in Mashpee. I mean, we have, I think, 4 3-families, and we have, you know, but they could qualify.
They could.
Yes.
So there would be a way not to negatively impact renters if it was set that way, perhaps.
Well,
But they would qualify, so.
well, if, for instance, you had a 2-family house, and the owner could qualify in their unit, but if they lease the other unit, okay, they're not going to pass that on to their, to their tenants. They could, but
Okay,
the
thank
odds
you.
of that are slim and none.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions at this time? Now, one of the other towns that does the residential tax exemption on the Cape is Provincetown, correct?
Yes.
And I know you spoke that Barnstable's has some experience with this, and I was just wondering if Provincetown has been reached out to see the pros and cons of doing it with their experience with it. And I'd welcome their input as a smaller town than Barnstable, as a comparative.
Yeah, I've
better
spoken with
understand.
Scott. I've spoken with Scott Farley, who's the director there. I've met with him at 2 meetings. He was very helpful. Provincetown's a unique,
Very different.
a unique resort community, but they also they got a home rule petition passed, and they got it passed for year-round renters as well. The only town in the state that has that.
Interesting. You had,
The only thing I was going to mention, Mr. Chair, in fairness to the assessor, he did previously mention to me that if you did go with this, that it could impact personnel, and that we're probably going to have at least a part-time, if not a full-time person, in addition to what we currently have.
in 2027.
Yes, well, in assessing, in his department.
I mean, it would be justified to carry that part-time annually, or just in the years where you have to renew,
Well,
revet?
I think ideally, you'd like to have someone that was dealing with it
Full-time.
full-time, but, or have them permanently, but I don't think we'd need one full-time person like Barnstable, because we're not as big as Barnstable.
But I thought the heavy workload is only on the years when you have to recertify.
Well,
So what would they be doing in
There's more workload
between?
when you have to recertify, there's no doubt about that, okay? But in assessing, The residential exemption changes everything that you do in your office, everything. I mean, I never realized how much it changes what you do. Every abatement you grant, every exemption you grant, you got to do it for the RX. We have to send notifications when we get the deeds every month, okay? We have to send something to the new homeowners. It's like dominoes, you know?
How does that work if you sell your home? And you're getting an
Well,
exemption?
it's very complicated. You already got the exemption if you sell your property. And then we have the new people come in,
Right.
and they want it, but we already gave it to
The other people?
the seller. And it creates this, you know, and if attorneys are not, I got to watch what I say, my wife's an attorney, you know, if attorneys are not on the ball at the closing and put it on the settlement sheet and all that, it creates all kinds of, you know, administrative nightmares. It really changes everything you do. So you just can't say, well, you know, every fifth year, we need to up the budget this. It's not that simple, unfortunately. I wish it were.
Basically, it's on a daily basis, right?
Yes, it's a daily thing that has to be addressed.
So what you just said brought up another question for me. When you say that they're getting their exemption, or they're getting their residential tax exemption, is that spread out across the tax bill, or is it done differently? So is it spread out across the tax
wanna
bill so that if a home is exchanged, if a home is sold?
If it's sold, it would, as Assessor Gibbons mentioned, it would need to be taken care of at closing. We've run into it before with some other exemptions where, okay, you sell your house, you're getting a veteran's exemption, you sell it to me, and the lawyer doesn't look at it, and all of a sudden, I'm not getting an exemption, or my taxes go up, and you've got the benefit from it. And it works the other way around, too. Whereas, okay, I sell my house to you, you want the exemption, but you aren't eligible because of the date that you took.
January 1st,
January
yeah.
1st, that you took you didn't take it by January 1st. So you're not eligible for the exemption. And that's with any exemption. That's not just residential. So the date becomes very, very important as to when you buy and sell the property, and what the lawyer looks at as far as, okay, you know, I should be getting money back because you're going to be getting a benefit because you're the buyer and I'm the seller, or the other way around. So, and Joe and I have gone through those conversations all too often with people, and they, unfortunately, it's usually after the fact and too late.
But the example you're giving, wouldn't that be true of, at any closing, what you have to?
Absolutely.
With taxes, regardless of whether there's an exemption or not?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Every closing, you know, there's more to it than just, okay, I'm portioning out the quarter taxes. Now, exemptions come out and are applicable to the actual tax bill, which comes out January 1st and is payable February and May 1st. The bill that comes out July 1st is a preliminary based on the prior year. So I hope that was the crux of your question first.
Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, again, 2,109 have requested
Have
an
been
exception.
approved by my office.
Okay. So if we were to approve this in 2 weeks, at some level, whatever, which we have no idea about yet, right, at this point, and then say up until April, other towns, everyone else in the town realizes, oh, I'm going to file my exception, and we get up to that 5,800 or even go beyond that, everything else beyond that, we got to find the money for it.
Over the 2,100.
Correct.
Over the 21.
Because we only,
Potentially 5,700.
so we only applied for 2,109, So anything above that, everybody that applies, there's a shortfall.
Right, and the finance director
That's, okay. I'm good.
made some, but it's a lot of money.
No, I can do that math in my head.
So what we're doing right now, just in preparation, if this were to pass, we have increased our overlay. Normally, the overlay, and that's when we grant abatements after the tax rate has been set.
Exemptions.
Or exemptions, yeah. We have to cover those taxes that will not be paid through the taxpayer by our overlay. And that is, all of us pay it, all taxpayers pay for this overlay. And what happens is, normally our overlay runs around $475,000. That's not taking the residential exemption into consideration. Because we're not sure what's going to happen, and this is where we're in this kind of what comes first, a dilemma, we're going to raise in this upcoming tax rate, we're going to raise the overlay from $475,000 to $800,000, which means we're going to raise additional funds in case we have additional approved applicants. If this were to pass and they didn't apply initially, they apply after the fact, we have a little bit of a cushion to cover those exemptions, residential exemptions, for those people who didn't initially apply but are eligible and would receive it.
But just to clarify, that 800,000, 400 to 800,000 does not cover a shortfall of 2109 to 6,000.
Potentially, no.
Okay, I just.
It does not.
To add to that, John, we have the bridge, we bought the bridge for Munis. It's working from PK to Munis. So those 2,100 would come across on the bridge. If you went to 5,800, my office has to hand enter the remainder. It takes, now there's about 300 exemptions every year standard. That takes my office about a day and a half to enter accurately. So you're talking a lot of hand entering if that comes to fruition. And I'd like to thank Jennifer Beaton, my assistant, publicly, because she was instrumental in helping me with the Munis Bridge and running it and making sure it works correctly. We're in discussions with the biller to make it show up on the bill if it is implemented.
I have no further questions.
One other thing I just wanted to add as well is that if this $800,000 is not sufficient funding in overlay, we will have to raise it on the following year's recap. So when we're doing our budgeting, again, you have to make sure you take that into consideration, because that will reduce the amount that you can raise for budgeting purposes and operations. So this is the kind of dance we're trying to do as far as, trying to be as accurate with estimates that we can, but we also have a dilemma in the fact that we can't raise too much overlay, because the Department of Revenue doesn't allow that. So that's what we're facing right now, and we're doing it. And we have a methodology that we are following right now to set the FY23 tax rate. But these are just items that we wanted everybody to be aware of, because you will be asked to make a decision in 2 weeks, and we just wanted to make sure everybody was able to make a decision with some background information as well. Thank you.
And I will be available if any of you, once you get the packet, you want to call me, you want to come in that week, I'm available for any questions you have, any detail you want. I mean, I can't give the assessing 101 class, but I can help you with whatever you need regarding the RX.
So typically, we get our packets on, they're prepared Thursday, so that would give 1 day, Friday, if our meeting's the following Monday. Are we going to receive packets via email prior to that? Is that what I'm hearing?
Or if we can have his
Information anyway.
Information
at
Yeah,
least for
we'll,
this.
we'll see if we can get that a little earlier, only because of the time sensitivity, and if you did have questions, obviously we want to try to answer them
Right.
in advance. So we'll work on that, Mr. Chair.
Just to, I just want to recap that you said that the 2109 that you have now represents 36% of the eligible,
Yeah,
the
our
folks
estimate,
eligible for the
yeah,
RS.
yeah.
All right. That's all I had. Anyone else?
No.
We look forward to the coming information. I'm sure we'll have
It'll be a
plenty of
long night.
questions.
We'll
Bring
make
your-
sure that we only have you on the agenda.
Bring your caffeine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, we have discussion and approval of the following resignations and appointments. Affordable Housing Committee candidates, Gary Schuman and Arden Russell. Term expires June 30th, 2023. Are both candidates present? Hello, Gary. Hello, Art. How did the board want to handle this? Would you like to have candidates come forward? Did you want to ask them any questions? Do you want to rely just on information in your packet?
Well, they already came before us twice.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but then again, they're here, I don't know.
Here, they've been
It'd be
patiently
unfair
waiting.
to give them whatever the chair feels is fair, but
And Alan was,
I'd like to give, each of them opportunity to come in, express, their interests, why they're interested in joining, so I could hear for myself from the two individuals and weigh that in. So first on, we have Arden Russell on the packet, if you could come forward.
Do you want the timer? No?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, if you could kind of elaborate and just, inform the board of why you would like to be appointed.
Sure. I'll try to keep it brief. When I interviewed with the Housing Committee, I gave a full example of all the projects and activities that I've worked on. But I applied at this point months ago because I knew of the vacancy, and I know that this is an area that I have the most expertise in. And I also know that it is a issue area that is at a crisis point for the town, and I know and trust and believe that I can share good information and some prior expertise, some prior knowledge. I can use the professional relationships that I have at federal level with Housing and Urban Development, at the state level with DHCD, at the county level with the home program, and at the local partnership level with our local nonprofits, who I still work with on a regular basis. It's an area that I obviously have great interest in, and as I said, I know that I can work and will work, whether I get on this committee or not, to make a difference in trying to improve the situation for the residents of Mashpee. I guess I was naive enough when I applied that I thought that the decision makers and leaders of this town would make a decision based on what was best for the residents and the viability of the town of Mashpee. I feel that I'm the candidate that would serve that purpose, as prior speakers mentioned. I feel that the leaders have a responsibility to choose the best candidate to affect solutions and change in the area that they are choosing to participate in, and I believe that I am that candidate. I know that I did very good work in Barnstable. We created a lot of housing units using a variety of strategies and tools and funding sources. If you drive into Hyannis today, if you drive down 28 and you drive into Hyannis, you'll see some of the efforts of my work there, and I was hoping to impart some of that in Mashpee. And so that is why I applied for the Housing Committee, the Affordable Housing Committee.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Arden? Members of the board?
I do have one question. You're also on CPC,
I am now, yes.
which the money that comes from CPC goes to Affordable Housing Committee.
It can,
Could
if
be
there are applicants for it, yes.
It could be a conflict of interest, you being the chairman of the CPC and being on the Affordable Housing.
Well, the Affordable Housing Committee itself never receives or applies for the money. It's the developers that they choose for the parcels that they have done the due diligence on. So I don't think it is a conflict. If I were to be the chairperson of the Housing Committee and serve on the trust, and the trust was asking for funds, I can see that being an area of conflict. But the Affordable Housing Committee itself does not ask for or receive any CPC funding.
Anyone else?
I guess I have a question.
Tom?
Because initially, in your presentation, you were talking about your expertise in affordable housing, which was, most of it was financing. Having contacts with the government that would allow you to get funding for the housing. As a member of the board, the Affordable Housing Committee, is that something that would be
So actually,
part of
that's not
your
really,
job?
that's not really where my area of responsibility lied when I was working. I did a variety of things. I did a lot of planning initiatives for developing strategies that the town could implement. For example, zoning changes that would incentivize a different type of housing other than single-family homes in areas. We did parcel analysis, land evaluations to determine areas and parcels that would be most suitable for affordable housing. I helped navigate the very complicated bureaucratic process for developers who are trying to, permit a process and then also seek funding. Sure.
Can I just interrupt you?
Sure.
So what is the job description of the Affordable Housing Committee member?
I think the job description of the Affordable Housing Committee member is to bring strategy ideas that have been vetted to the Board of Selectmen for adoption, for ideas and strategies that the town can then implement that will increase the supply of affordable housing. So bringing ideas to both potentially the planning board, who might make zoning decisions, or to the Board of Selectmen. For example, tonight's discussion about the possibility of a residential exemption causing harm to renters. There's a strategy in place that the town could adopt, but to do a home rule petition to include year-round renters. That would be an idea that the Affordable Housing Committee would discuss and vet and research and then bring to the Select Board to possibly adopt as a way to help improve the affordable housing situation in
So
town.
you'd be a consultant to possibly the Board of Selectmen?
I think
And
that the
telling us how,
Affordable Housing Committee is an advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen, yes.
for funding?
For all types of strategies and tools that the town could use to increase their supply of affordable housing.
Okay. All right. I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was just to get the ball rolling, and there's a lot to it. I mean, obviously, you know how many units we've had sitting, waiting to get going, to put a shovel in the ground, and it just...
Which is why I think we need to start coming up with additional strategies. I mean, the Housing Committee can provide ideas to the Affordable Housing Trust, who has many more available responsibilities and actions that they can take. So they can provide ideas to the trust, who can then implement those ideas as well. So, yeah, I think that the Housing Committee is a percolator for best practices that towns can then evaluate to implement for ways that will best suit their community.
Anyone else have?
I mean, I'll give you another example. The state often puts out different programs that towns can adopt. So in the last community that I worked in, we adopted the Housing Development Incentive Program, which provides tax incentives to market rate housing. But we needed to create a plan, we needed to create a strategy, we needed to essentially convince the state that we should adopt that plan and that we'd be able to administer it, which we did, and then we were able to provide tax incentive credits to market rate housing developers.
But you were a director of the program?
I was the housing
An employee of Barnstable County?
To the town. Well, originally, my first job was with the county, administering a federal housing program, and then for the last 12 years, I was with the town in the planning department.
So you've been working for the county government or the town of Barnstable as an affordable...
Housing specialist, yes.
Right, but not on the board. You were not on the Affordable Housing Committee.
I was not. I was the staff person that staffed the town's Affordable Housing Committee.
No, and I'm surprised because you were beyond what the Affordable
Yeah, so
Housing...
I would staff them. I would provide them staff reports. I would provide them information. I would, I would take their concepts and ideas and share that with the leaders of the community.
Michaela?
I was going to ask you about specific projects that you would bring to Mashpee. What experience that you've gained? You mentioned some of the housing driving up 28, and that you were very instrumental in bringing that. How do you see taking those skills and bringing those to Mashpee?
Sure. Well, I think we just need to start investigating many more different ideas and options that the town might be interested in adopting and moving forward with. Right now, we've got a number of great projects, but they're one thing. They're land with a developer. I would hope to work with the trust, who, again, is able to spend money in a more expeditious way, and just be bringing constantly new concepts and ideas that I hope that we could then move forward to implement. For example, I think that I think it is a good idea to start a buy-down program. A buy-down program means you go out and buy a modest market rate house using affordable housing money, you put a deed restriction on it, and you sell it to a first-time buyer. You can do that in 60 days, not 6 years. We need to be investigating these other ideas and programs that we can put in place, and not just waiting for when is somebody going to move into 108 Commercial Street? Like you said, it might be 8 years before somebody gets into that apartment. We need to be doing other things. We need to be looking at our zoning. We need to do immense planning initiatives to look at appropriate located zoning changes that will allow multifamily housing, that will allow top-of-the-shop housing, that will allow duplexes potentially. We need to better incentivize our accessory dwelling unit program. It's on the books now, but it's still really difficult to take part in. And now, unfortunately, with the prices through the roof, it might need some financial incentives. We need to bring that into a more robust condition. So I think that there's an arm's length of things that we can start doing if we have the capacity to do it.
So, having looked over your resume, I think it's very impressive. You've been in the business, we'll say, for over 26 years, working for the town of Barnstable as the largest municipality on the Cape, and I think they do a much better at achieving the set aside through 40B than we've been able to do. And then also the Cape Cod Commission, you know, you're looking at the bulleted items on here, they are very specific to kind of the goals of the affordable housing. So, you know, that kind of jumps out at me. You know, I see value in your experience in composing grants, managing actual housing projects and programs, you know, developing strategies to achieve housing goals, including program development, funding, zoning initiatives, and policy guidance. As it relates to our currently, we're going through the local comprehensive plan modification that hasn't been done in I forget, since '98. And so part of the responsibilities of the affordable housing is to influence that local comprehensive plan. So now seems like a critical time to have the utmost experience at the table contributing to that comprehensive plan that's going to guide you for future direction in the future initiatives of the town, meeting affordable housing. You know, that's what I understand with the policy that was presented to us earlier. You know, I think it speaks to some of that with, if you would read over some of the bulleted items, you know, there is a significant amount of direct relevant experience both on the town of Barnstable side from 2009 to present, and also on the Cape Cod Commission side where, you know, even reviewing and developing pro formas, you know, that kind of expertise is valuable to an affordable housing program, and, you know, compliance with federal programs and such. It all just seems very relevant. Thank you.
Any other
Arden.
questions?
I have one more
Sure.
question. You're familiar with how they rated you?
The
Affordable
Housing Committee.
Housing Committee.
Yeah, I was-
Committee members.
Yeah,
Rated.
from what I heard them say at the meeting that I was in attendance at.
Strongly recommended 0.
Mhm.
Recommended, 2 of them recommended you. Recommended with hesitation, 2. Why do you think they had hesitation with you?
The first time I.
Mr. Chair, if I
That's an
could,
assumption.
Yeah.
She can't speak to
I
other
just-
people's.
if I
I
could.
don't think that's appropriate
I-
to have her guess.
I think we should stay clear of any meeting that was declared to be in violation of the open meeting law. And I'm not getting into any particular side. I just think my advice would be to stay clear of any information that came out of that meeting.
I think this one came from the
No,
second.
this is clear, this is not.
This is
It
in our
came
packet.
from the.
I
yeah, yeah.
thought you were referring to the first
No.
one.
I
I'm
just-
sorry.
I just don't-
Then I
Our
apologize.
information.
I apologize.
I don't know
I
that
thought
it's
you were talking
appropriate
about-
to
Yeah,
ask for
I,
someone to give,
I mean,
you
this
know,
is a-
they're,
We don't
she
sit on that
doesn't
committee.
know, but she doesn't know what their justification was for giving the answers that they gave. I mean, you're asking her to assume what their reasoning was. I don't think that's,
Sorry, Carol, I thought you were talking about
I
the
don't
first
know
one.
how she can speak to that
Yeah, I don't-
definitively with any kind of,
That's fine. I'm
that's
done,
better
Dave.
suited for
Yeah, I mean, we
the
were
people that voted.
interviewed, and then they filled out their report, and then they reported it back out, so I don't
But
know.
that was the second one.
Second one.
Yeah, I'm good.
If no one else has anything further.
No.
Thank you.
Great, thank
Arlene.
you.
And Gary Schulman? Schuman, sorry. My apologies, I missed your name. Gary Schuman. Welcome, thank you. If you could also, you know, begin, just express, you know, your desire and interest in why you want to sit on the affordable housing.
Sure,
Committee.
sure. You know, I think I originally explained, when I moved here a few years ago, I decided that, you know, it's time in life that I want to get more involved in a community, give back, help where I can. And, you know, the two clear problems, wastewater and housing, Wastewater seems to be on the road and going down a path. Housing seems to be somewhat stalled. I think as a good example, last Thursday, there was a conference in Hyannis about protecting affordable housing, and they expected 75, 80 people. 400 people showed up. And I think that highlights the seriousness of the problem. And a lot of the problem also that was highlighted had to do with workforce housing. They took quite a bit of time having a couple panels talk through business owners that are having challenges by hiring people, keeping people, bringing people on, and hearing stories of people driving 50 miles each way to work. And how do you keep somebody like that? The other scary thing that came out of it is that if somebody, is hired and wants to buy a house in Mashpee, down the Cape, you need an income of about $200,000 a year. How many small businesses can afford to pay somebody that kind of income? So I think the seriousness of the problem, and as Arden mentioned, it's beyond serious. It needs to be addressed. I think the difference that I can bring is I don't, profess to have the background. I mean, I've now had 6 months of attending conferences and getting up to speed. I think the committee has a wealth of experience. They have very, very deep experience in affordable housing. They have people with experience at the local level, people with experience in the regional level. My background, if you look at, and it was commented, the past 2 years of being a realtor, I have 3 houses sold. That's a failure. That's not a successful realtor. My wife happens to be, the successful one out of the 2 of us. I decided 2 years ago to help her. I administrate some things for her, but I really don't do that much with it. My background really is I spent 35 years helping to build companies, small companies, bringing them into new markets, and using technology to address really challenging issues and problems. So a lot of it really has to do with being collaborative, understanding that people don't see eye to eye, but you can find a common ground. The other thing I think that makes a difference is, listening to some of the conversation before, and even when the trust was here, I think what's missing is there seems to be, an evil connotation around talking about bringing private business into the picture or working with developers. The town alone, I don't see how it's ever going to make the 10% number that it's targeted for. Projects have stalled, projects have taken a long time. The wastewater issue is going to create even more delays. So, it was talked about before. Different alternatives need to be looked at, whether it's reuse, expanding existing facilities, or things that can be done, different than just putting new structures up, because that alone's not going to do it. You need multifamily housing, you need complexes, you need reuse. Am I going to make all that happen? No. What I can do, though, is help work with the team and try to bring new ideas, understanding financing, understanding how to get groups together, and come up with the ideas that maybe we can move it along at a quicker pace. So that's really my interest in it.
So, I heard you, it sounds like you firmly understand the issues at hand. I don't know if I heard as much of, kind of solutions that you propose to bring, kind of avenues that you want to bring to the table to explore, and that's kind of what I was looking for, in what you bring. I mean, you're very familiar with kind of the urgency that things need to be done. Any questions the board have for Mr. Schuman?
I have a question.
No? Okay. Tom?
I think I shouldn't say I think, you and I were both at that same conference, and it really
Okay.
did highlight the crisis and the growing crisis.
Yeah.
My question would be, what in your background, in your experience, would help you solve some of that problem in Mashpee? And what do you bring, how do you bring some of the solutions to Mashpee? What in your background helps you understand that?
Sure. I think it's probably more, anytime we brought a new solution or a new product to the market, not something that's already in existence, but something new, there typically was a lot of pushback. You're trying, well, in a sales perspective, you're trying to get an organization to buy something that may impact employees, that may impact how people have been doing things for a long time, and they're very comfortable with it. And a lot of people don't like change. So a lot of what I've done in the past has really been a lot of communication to understand what are the issues, what are both sides of what it is we're trying to do, and then try to find a medium point where both sides can be successful. I really don't subscribe to the theory that, winner takes all. You really need a team effort in trying to get both sides of the party to agree to an ultimate solution that will work. It requires being collaborative, and it requires a lot of listening, and I think that's probably a lot of the reason why I've been successful in the past, is just through those simple techniques, but they're hard to do. They're very simple to talk about, but they're hard to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Gary, let me ask you this. I know you're limited as to, this isn't something that, you just want to be a member on the team. That's how I see you. That's what I hear in your voice. You want to be a part of the team and move this forward. I mean, the delays that have taken place in the affordable housing in the town of Mashpee, nobody's fault. It was just one thing after another.
Yeah.
COVID come in and it delayed projects. Then we get a bad title on one of the parcels of land. We have land available sitting here waiting to be developed. And all we need to do is put it together. And if the funds are available, we should be doing it sooner rather than later. But I really believe that we need to have a team player. I really do. I think that nobody needs to be the leader, but a team that works together that brings it forward to the board, to the Board of Selectmen, and give it to us in our hands and let's move forward. And that's what I liked about you last time, is what I like about you today. I appreciate you showing up and putting yourself out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to do what I can for the community. I love it here, and, plan to be here for a very long time, or until my hair grows back.
Thank you.
But,
Me too.
anything else?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So, after hearing from both candidates, open it up for discussion amongst the board to,
If I may?
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I didn't speak to either candidate or ask a question about either candidate for a reason, because I didn't want to be asked, different questions about one candidate and have different questions to a different candidate, to the other candidate, and it would seem, I don't want to seem like biased, if you will. But one thing I did want to get across is I'm so happy that we have two incredibly qualified candidates. What kills me is this is the one committee that we just can't put both of on, because the amazing thing is we got all these other committees with openings on them, and actually desperate openings in desperate need to be filled. And I mean desperate. And then we could talk about that later offline, but I will tell you. So that being said, it's just amazing that we've had this, it's long and drawn out, and you're both valuable candidates, and for different reasons. So no matter what happens, I thank you both for being very interested in the position. But I will tell you, no matter what, there are other positions available, so whoever doesn't get on the position, on the committee, now, whether you can wait for an opening or join another committee, because there's others out there and they're valuable. I will say, some things I've heard in public comment, speaking negatively about a candidate that is looking to volunteer in a town committee, and talking down about their record or what they do, and they only did this. I think there's no place for that. So there were some comments, and I'm not going to go into it. I'm done with hearing that, the negativity. If you want to talk about a candidate, talk about the positive aspects of that candidate, and let everyone talk about the positive aspects of that candidate. That's it. The negative campaigning, I'm so sick of it. So, thank you, Karen, for doing your presentation and clarifying the appointment policy and boards of commissions and committees and councils. And to clarify, what brought, it's highlighted in my mind is the merit-based principle, and I circled that considers the candidate's qualifications and suitability. So right in there, I circled that. So there are, there may be a candidate that's maybe more qualified, but there may be maybe the different candidate could be more suitable. And again, it's the hardest thing here is we have 5 selectmen, 5 select members of the select board. Let me stand corrected. That it's our opinion. I hope that it's everyone's opinion, that our opinion is what we think is best for Mashpee. But I will tell you, if this one position is not available, doesn't go to that one candidate, whoever that is, please stay involved. Wait for that committee, another opening to open up, because I'm sure there will. It opens up. It always does. If not, join another committee, because there's plenty of openings. So again, qualifications and suitability. It says it has to have them both. In my mind, I think we all have to consider qualifications and suitability, as Karen clarified here with the policy. So that being said, I've said enough, and I want to thank again both candidates. I'm happy to move on, because there's a big job to do in affordable housing. So, appreciate your time.
Carol?
I say the same thing John does. I think suitability, and that's where I was going with the merit system that was given to us from the Housing Committee. They're both good candidates. They both stood up and went through the process, and we got to give people credit for that. Unfortunately, it's been a long process, and I feel bad on that part. But, and like John said, if you don't get on this committee, there's many other committees that need help and people. And I thank you both for going through the process.
No, the only, for certain, I can agree with the fact that if this doesn't work out on this board, we need good people to volunteer for boards. There's always a spot for anybody that wants to be in the game.
Michaela?
Okay. I too would like to thank both candidates. And I have a lot of respect for anybody who is willing to step up and to volunteer. And as Carol said, this has been a very, very long process. When I think about, it's been mentioned a few times that there are other committees, and I know there are other committees, and people could step up for those committees. I think when I look at affordable housing and I look at merit and suitability, I'm looking at 2 very different resumes. Both of them important, both of them good, both of them bring strengths. But I think with regard to affordable housing and looking at qualifications and suitability to make a difference during this housing crisis, I think I need to look at somebody who has a depth of experience in that area. So I know there are different committees and all of them valuable, but I think we are focused on the Affordable Housing Committee, and I'd like to take us back to that discussion.
Excellent points, everyone. And I too want to thank, both candidates for putting themselves out there. And, it's not easy to always find time to join committees. Everyone has family and personal business. So, just putting yourself out there to do those civic roles is greatly appreciated. We don't have enough people stepping up. So your efforts are appreciated, both candidates. And to John, everyone's point that there's plenty of committees out there for everyone to sit on. I too did weigh heavily on the resumes myself, the way that Michaela had stated, just because of the current housing crisis that we're in, and the fact that we are going through the local comprehensive plan review. I feel as though, we need to, we don't have the luxury of looking at somebody with such qualifications as Arden and discounting that. I feel as though I treat everybody, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt of being mature and adults and working together in a functional way, and until proven otherwise. So, I do feel strongly that Arden is actually the person that's most suitable, merit-based, looking at the resumes, and I don't know if that's the shared opinion of the board, but that's my personal opinion, and would entertain a motion to appoint Arden Russell to the
I'd move to
Affordable
appoint
Housing.
Arden.
Would anyone care to second that? Not hearing a second. I guess I would entertain a motion to appoint Gary Schuman.
I'll second that.
And somebody has to make the motion.
I thought you made the
I
motion.
said I would entertain a motion. Somebody has to,
So moved.
second?
And I'll second that. Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Roll call vote. Carol?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
No.
No. Thank you. On to next business. Appointments. Council on Aging, Sherry Norman. Term expires June 30th, 2024.
I make a motion to approve the Council of Aging appointment, Sherry Norman. Term expires June 30th, 2024.
Second.
Having a first and second, roll call vote. Michaela?
Yes.
Tom? John?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That motion is unanimous. Human Services Committee, Sam McDonald. Term expires June 30th, 2023.
Make a motion to appoint Sam McDonald, Human Service Committee. Term expires June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Having a first and second, roll call vote. Carol?
Yes.
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 Tom?
Yes.
Caleb. And I'm a yes as well. That motion passes unanimous. Mashpee Community Garden Advisory Committee, Kirsten Nordstrom. Term expires June 30th, 2023.
A motion to approve Christian Nordstrom, Mashpee Community Garden Advisory Committee. Term expires June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Having a first and second, roll call vote. Michaela?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well on that. Motion's unanimous. Resignations. Council on Aging, Eugenia Jean Nussey. Term expires June 30th, 2024.
Motion to accept the resignation with a letter. Council of Aging, Eugenia Jean Nossi. Term
Second.
expires
Nussey.
June 30th, 2024.
Hearing a first and second, roll call vote. Carol?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Michaela? I'm a yes as well. Capital Improvement Program, CIP, Committee, Charles Chuck Gazer. Term expires June 30th, 2023.
Motion to accept resignation with a long letter to Chuck. He's been on that committee for a very long time for the Capital Improvement Program, CIP Committee. Term expires June 30th. And thank you, Charles Chuck Gazer, for your commitment.
Second that and second that.
Having a first and second, all roll call vote. Michaela?
Yes.
Yes.
Tom? John?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That too is unanimous and passes. Moving on, communications and correspondence.
I do.
Michaela?
So most of you know that I've been meeting with many, many people over the past few weeks, and I had the pleasure of meeting with the superintendent of schools a couple weeks ago, and she has graciously invited the select board on a tour on November 28th, which is a Monday, from 9:30 till 11 o'clock.
Thank you for that. Anyone else?
If I could, Mr. Chair, just as a reminder, friendly reminder, if there's a quorum that attends, please don't discuss any business. Talk about the
No
Bruins,
huddles?
the Bruins and how well they're playing, or whatever you
Or the Falcons.
wish to.
Thank you for that friendly reminder.
Thank you.
New business, none. Additional topics, liaison reports.
I have an additional topic.
Additional topics?
Given the critical condition of our waters, I think it's really important to keep the issue of water quality front and center. So I'd like to suggest and motion that we add water quality to each agenda of the select board, so that we are constantly have the opportunity to discuss what's happening with water, with sewer, with all of the things that are connected to water quality issues. So I'd like to see it as, I'm making a motion to put that on our agenda as a regular ongoing item.
As an open item,
Standing agenda.
so it's on the standing agenda.
Would you be okay with, I mean, I 100% agree, but maybe add, you mentioned wastewater, so wastewater,
Wait.
water, only because we don't want to bring in,
So many
Point
people.
of- Point of order. I think there's a motion, I think we go to a second, don't we?
Correct.
If we have one.
The
and then
order would be
discussion,
the motion.
And then discussion?
Have a second, and then go to discussion before we start making amendments to the
Okay.
base motion.
Thank you.
So is there a second on that?
John, do you want to say?
I second, yes.
Hearing a first and second, the discussion
Yeah,
would
so,
be to amend.
just adding, a wastewater, water, the only thing is, because if we have a meeting every 2 weeks, who are we gonna bring in? We're gonna bring in, we can't bring in Dr. House every week, every 2 weeks.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So but I do agree, it's, there's so many impacts. Wastewater, water health, water quality. I mean, I don't know how we, catchphrase that as a topic item, but
May I? What if we said water quality? And I wasn't envisioning that we would be bringing a speaker in. What I was thinking about, for example, and tonight's meeting may have been too long to do this, but you're at every sewer committee meeting, and not everybody in the public is. So for you to have the opportunity, if we have water quality on the agenda every week, for example, you could have explained what happened at the sewer committee or what they're working towards. I think just by having it on the agenda, it puts it first and forward so that there's something, there might not be a lot to talk about, but it's something that comes up at every meeting. And I think there's so much that we need to do. There's so many concerns. I think it provides a vehicle, to have it on the agenda provides a vehicle to communicate with residents in a thoughtful way so that they're informed. They're informed on a regular basis. I think that eliminates surprises a lot of times, and I think it keeps one of the most pressing issues of the town in everybody's mind.
I like the idea, just to have it, just so that if there is anything to talk about, it leaves the opportunity open to put something out there. I do like the idea.
So
So
was
you-
your statement, clean water?
Water quality issues.
Water quality issues, okay. I was good with that, water quality issues.
The only thing that I would want to clarify is I will not have Ray Jack or Ashley or anybody else here unless directed, because I don't want to be providing comp time if there are no issues. If there are issues, then obviously that's totally different. But I'd like the discretion to discuss that with the chair, and then we'll figure out whether or not somebody needs to come in.
That's fair.
So does this involve the Board of Health? Is that what we're looking for?
And it could be
Input
Board of
from the
Health.
Board of Health?
It could be Board of Health.
I think it's more for discussion purposes, the way I'm understanding is for discussion of information or anything that we gather as a board and bring to the attention of the table.
Yep.
And if that warrants further discussion, then the following meetings, town manager is able to get the respective people to come in and speak to the issue as it develops. It's just a standing item to keep it at the forefront of our minds and send a message to everyone in the town and otherwise that it is a priority issue and deserves its own line item as a standing item on every agenda because of the important significance and nature of it. It's not committing to, if there's nothing to talk about, it's like any of the other blank items under here, you just move past it and continue on. It doesn't require that you speak to it at every meeting.
Exactly.
So if there's something of importance to bring forward, then it would be brought up.
It leaves the opportunity there.
That's fine.
Roll call vote on that motion.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion passes and was unanimous. Jumping down to the liaison reports.
I have quite a bit. Chamber news, for one. We had 4 ribbon cuttings in 2 weeks. One was for the school, the field and the track, which came out absolutely beautiful. And 3 were new businesses in town, which is really nice to see in 2 weeks' time. 2022 Christmas Parade, the chamber has invited us as selectmen to walk in the front of the parade, as we normally do, with the town manager, assistant town manager, and anybody other in the departments that would like to do so. And the parade is December 10th.
I'm going to be
Thanksgiving.
carrying a banner with the superintendent. He's going to be in a Grinch outfit.
Oh, that's good. I know that.
I don't think we told him yet, huh?
No, he's had the Grinch outfit before. Thanksgiving meals. If anybody is alone for Thanksgiving, or you know of someone that's going to be alone, or a couple that doesn't have anybody for Thanksgiving, they can call the chamber for more information. We will be delivering Thanksgiving meals again through the chamber and Roach Brothers. And that's what I have for right now.
And that's a great event.
It is. It is.
So the other item is, it's the time of year we're going to go through the various liaison appointments to various commissions. That's been handed out. I'm not going to go through that tonight. If everyone can take a look at it and kind of let me know, or be prepared to discuss prior to next meetings, that if you want to remain on the committees you're on, or if you're looking to shift gears and take on something else, or just let me know.
Oh, the ones over here
Directly.
to the left of the assigned?
Other to be decided.
Correct. So that's for next meeting. Town manager updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Veterans Day ceremony, Friday, November 11th at 10 a.m. at the Community Park gazebo. Just want to remind you all of that. And also want to make sure everybody is aware that the preliminary certification from the assessors property valuations, which you heard about tonight, for new property valuations for fiscal year 2022 is complete. And if anybody's got any questions, I guess, contact the assessor's office. And also, I think somebody mentioned earlier, we're desperate for some positions. We're really desperate in the Board of Health. We're down to one. So I know you folks know a lot of people. That's why you're sitting here. If you could get the word out, we've advertised it. We need somebody on the Board of Health like ASAP. We've got one member on a 3-member Board of Health. So in your passing of friends and contacts, if you could find somebody that might be interested in that position, it would be helpful because we are indeed desperate. And very, very important, as a reminder, I think everybody knows this, but Election Day is tomorrow. And for anybody that has not voted yet, it's at the Quashnet School, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Again, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., Quashnet School.
Election day is tomorrow?
I just want to get those times out, 7 a.m. to 8
We'll be
p.m.
able to watch TV later.
And that's all I have.
No commercials. Thank you.
At this time, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I move the board convene an executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy regarding negotiations.
You may return.
Oh, I may return, okay.
We changed.
Regarding negotiations with non-union personnel relative to personal administration plan and with the following collective bargaining units, where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town. Do I have to list each one? Or can I say as
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
personal? Okay. Mashpee Permanent Firefighters Association, International Association of Firefighters, IAFF Local 2519, Mass COP Local 324, Unit A, Patrol Officers and Detectives, Mass COP Local 320, Unit B, Sergeants, Mass COP Local 477, Administrators, Unit C, Police Lieutenants, Laborers International Union of North America, LUNA, Mass Public Employee Local 1249, Administrators Unit A, Administrators, Laborer International Union of North America, LUNA, Mass Public Employees Local 1249, Administrators, Unit B, Administrators, Service Employees International Union, SEIU, AFL-CIO, Local 88, Public Works Unit A, Service Employees International Unit, SEIU, AFL-CIO, Local 888, Public Works Unit B, Service Employees International Union, SEIU, Local 888, Clerical, Library, Dispatch, Chapter, from which the board will and could return in open session.
Will not reconvene.
No,
in
they
the
just
House
told
of-
me that we will.
Will, oh, all right.
We may return.
Gotcha. And that's Liuna? It's, it's not Luna, it's Liuna. I was a member at Local 271.